Ah!
It's live. That means
Come on.
I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the
Nice.
CRM Playaz, and wow, we have come to the last executive roundtable of 2022. Do you feel emotional or anything?
I am ready to cry.
Okay.
Yeah, but mostly cry in relief, I think.
Well, as long as it's some relief in the crying, no tears. There's really no tears in CRM. I hope.
That's
Um,
sad, actually. Wait a minute. What does that mean for Keith?
oh my God, really?
Yeah.
Here.
I'm going to.
Wow.
I'm going full
Okay.
McHale. I'm going full McHale's
I
Navy.
think you have taken the
Full
lead
McHale's
because
Navy. No.
I'm
You're never
sure
going to
there
get
are
up that.
many people out there that have no clue as to who Keith Tier is. So
Why
you
do I
you
care? What do
dropped
they
one
care?
that nobody knows. So if you
I
drop
did it.
and nobody knows,
Brent, I hate to tell you, when you dropped the McHale's Navy one, you and I were the only two people who were probably listening who even knew what that was.
okay, we're gonna move on because this could take the next 90 minutes. We're not here to talk about McHale's Navy or unfortunately you, Keith Tier, although you're my bud. We can't talk about you. We're actually here to peer into the future and think about what 2023 will be for CRM. Did you like the dramatic pausing I did? Did that work?
I did sort of. I mean, I'd say add a add a half a second to each pause would be even better. Then you'd be more like with that little clipping thing that goes on when you do that.
Well, Jason says you were not supposed to be crying. Unless we're for Argentina.
Wow.
Actually, Argentina, they don't want us to cry because they want to win.
That's right. It's France. Don't cry for me, France. Right.
Hey, happy birthday to Ray Gerber. I saw on Facebook, so I wanted to put it up there. Happy birthday, Ray. I still owe you the Five Guys, or do you owe me the Five Guys, or do we owe us 10
well,
guys?
no, if it's his birthday,
yeah.
You owe him.
Okay, well, I owe you.
And that's now there is a Sven comment here.
Well, Sven was the first one out the gate, but they started coming in fast and furious. But
no, but there's a Sven.
I agree with Sven.
Message. Go down. You'll see further. Take a look further down. There you go.
Oh heck, I don't know what is that German?
No, it's well maybe.
Okay,
let me see. Yeah, I would say yes. German, maybe a dialect of German, like Bavarian or something.
Sven, let us know. We'll keep babbling for a bit. We got to get moving. Got to get moving.
Dutch.
Yeah, let us know. But we got to get going because we got a lot to do in a kind of a small amount of time because we're talking about CRM next year, and we don't know what it means. That's why we're asking all these people, right?
It's also why we have to finish the show before next year.
Oh my God! Well, we're definitely going to do that because we don't have the opportunity to keep these people for that long. But we are glad to be here. We're glad to be doing this, and we are glad to have you guys out there participating in the conversation. So why don't we kind of set the table? And just in case people said they've been having some issues with LinkedIn watching our show. So if you have any issue whatsoever, with LinkedIn watching us on the LinkedIn stream, try YouTube. And we're pretty easy to find. YouTube.com/ and then you have to have the @ at CRM Playaz. And if you go add the streams, it should bring you right to the live stream that we're doing right now. So if you're having any difficulties, I hear like LinkedIn, sometimes it like keeps starting and stopping and stuff like that. Try youtube.com/ at CRM Playaz /streams. And hopefully, if you do have problems, that will solve them for you. All right, let me get rid of that.
Chuck Schaefer.
We're seeing people we haven't seen in a while. So why don't we set the stage for what we're going to be doing over the course of, the initial 90 minutes, which is rapid fire panel discussions with great folks, starting with this group of people. And we're going to bring them out shortly. We're going to do quick introductions and then get into it because literally we really don't have a lot of time. But we this is a pretty big thing. So we're glad to have Rob Tarkoff from Oracle, Nehal Bajwa from Microsoft, John Tashik from Salesforce, and Clint Oram. I have to say, not just Clint Oram, but he still has the coolest Twitter handle in the industry, Sugar Clint, from Sugar CRM. And I think I saw him in. If I didn't see him, hopefully he'll be here shortly. We really want to make sure he's in. So, matter of fact, we seem to have lost some folks in the green room. Okay, there's John Tash. So, what happened to John? All right. So we got 3 of the 4, and I think we're just gonna, try to wait a minute to see if Clint comes back, and we're gonna just do this. Set the stage for the rest of it. So after we do our panel with the vendor execs, we got some analysts coming on.
We got our buddies, actually. We've got this is a group that literally probably does not actually need introductions, aside from the fact that all 3 of them are extremely well known in the enterprise tech, CRM world, etc. They're also and are prominent unto themselves. They're all good friends of ours and friends of the show, right? Ray, we have Ray Wang, Mike Fawcett, and Dennis Pombriant. Ray, of course, runs Constellation Research. Mike runs Arian Research and Dennis Beagle Research, which you can read. All of them are long-standing veterans of this industry and know their stuff. Hey, Polly, good to see you, my bud. First man I ever met, period, in CRM, him.
Wow.
So, at a conference when he was working for, what was Sales Logics, right? So, anyway, so it's a great group of analysts. They have the history and also the vision to let us know what is and going to be. And this is a remarkable group of practitioners who will be coming on around 2:35, 2:40. Fiona Green of Winners. Now, Fiona is out of the UK. She is involved deeply in the sports world. She is both a strategician and a practitioner of CRM, knows the industry inside and out. Stephanie Boyer, she teaches sales at Bryant University, is one of our regulars when it comes to the happy hours, is an extraordinary mind. She and a partner of hers have created a sales technology that is off the charts, one of the best sales training technologies I've ever heard, seen, or known anything of. And finally, Marta Federici, who at Henkel, who I've known, it's got to be a good 15 years at this point. She used to run global CRM for Philips out of Europe. She's in Europe. And now she runs it and several other digital pieces for Henkel. She's a remarkable, on the practitioner side, a wonderful, wonderful, warm person. And it's a great group. Again, highly experienced, real thinkers in this bunch. And then finally, well, not totally finally, but for the most part, finally, we have play in residence, as you call him, Brent, the Golden Smog, the Midas of MarTech, Anand Thakur, who's going to give us the investor's view of CRM 2023. And of course, we have another play in residence and a man who will be having his own show starting next year called At the End of the Day with Bob Stutz. And that would be Bob Stutz, who is one of the foremost pioneers in CRM over decades. And let's just say, at the end of the day, a person who will speak his mind. And he will be at the end of our day, actually.
Yeah.
So
nice way to put it. All right. So keeping things moving. This is what we're here to talk about. This all came about from kind of a simple statement that we heard from Zach Sprackett of Sugar a couple of weeks ago when he described CRM as being able to tell stories at scale. And neither one of us had ever heard anybody describe CRM like that before. So we're like, maybe the definition of CRM has changed that dramatically that neither one of us maybe even recognize some of the more, modern definitions. So we thought what it would be great basically to bring all these folks together and talk about what CRM could or would or should be in 2023. Now, in addition to the panel that we're about to roll out, we also invited a number of our friends in the industry, ask them to make a minute, actually less than a 2-minute video, just giving us their definition of what CRM is to them and what it will be in 2023. Now, we asked them to do it in 2 minutes and less. And yeah, you guys know the group in this industry. I think maybe 2 of them out of the 11 that we got were even under 3 minutes. So what we're going to do is we're going to post the videos because we can't play them all. They're really good, but they're kind of long. So we're not going to be able to play them today, but we're going to post them on our site, and we will be sprinkling them in on some of the social channels, maybe some clips, and because there's some really good stuff. But we are going to play one to kind of set the stage for the conversation, and that goes to Rebecca Wetterman, but Rebecca is not alone.
Hey folks, it's Rebecca and Patrick here from Valwar. We're looking at 2023, hopefully as an up with people year for CX and CRM, meaning we meet customers where they are on their journeys, that we build customer service processes for the agents that we have and not the ones that we want, that we grow those agents, and that we take advantage of things like AI and automation to make the most of managers and employees across sales, marketing, and service. Happy New Year's, everybody.
Happy New Year's, Rebecca, and
Yes.
Patrick too. I was really waiting for Patrick to chime in.
His day is coming.
And maybe. So right now, let's keep it moving. Why don't we introduce our 4 vendor executives, and we just need to jump into this.
Yeah, we did the introductions already when we went through it, so we're good.
Each out the cavalcade, and unfortunately, we're still looking for Clint, but Neha Bajwa from Microsoft.
Welcome.
Tarkov from
Oracle, Rob.
And John Tashik from Salesforce. Thank you all for being here. We are so excited to have this conversation with you. And why don't we just kick it off? Why don't we ask each of you to take 30 seconds, a minute, high-level view. What you think CRM will be in 2023? Whatever it is, will it be different? Will it be the same? If there's a big distinction between next year and what happened before, maybe a high-level bullet point on that. So, how about we start with you?
Oh, wow. I think, Rob, did you say it was the storytelling at scale? For me and for us at Microsoft, CRM is, and in 23, it's going to start getting back to the basics of customer relationships and being able to put the customer back at the center, right? CRM started off with the promise of being the customer database and being able to understand the customer deeply. Rebecca said it right, meeting the customer where they are. And we've sort of moved a little bit away from that. CRM has become a sales manager tool. We want to get back, and I think it will start becoming the place where data gets created and sorted for customer data across sales, marketing, and service, automation. AI gets really put to use for the employees and the agents to do the next best thing, next best action. So CRM becomes the customer experience solution that it has the promise to be.
Rob, want to go next?
Well, sure. I would say the biggest trend we're going to see in 23 is radical simplification. And what I mean by that is, 22 during the pandemic and 21 was all about a lot of point solutions that started emerging surrounding customer systems. You had new categories being formed, things like the people are calling it sales engagement, other, areas like this. And I think virtual events, all these sort of things emerging, I think a lot of that is going to be streamlined into simple suites. And the suites are going to be much more about end-to-end. They're going to be much more about thinking about more of an orchestrated process from marketing through sales to service, leveraging less technology, probably fewer vendors, this is probably one of the years where it benefits you to be part of a broader suite than as part of a series of point solutions. And I just think budgets are going to get cut for a lot of customers. You know, they're not going to get to experiment with as many tools, so they're going to have to do more with less. And we're going to see end-to-end suites and end-to-end flows, particularly by industry, really be the thing that people focus on.
So I have no idea where John went.
Oh.
Is he back?
It
Is he
looks like
back?
he's trying to come back.
You're live.
Okay.
And look who showed up. Sugar
All
Cookie.
right. There
Wow.
they are.
Perfect timing.
Okay.
Hey,
Yeah.
good to see
Sorry,
you.
guys. It was in my calendar on Pacific time, not Eastern time. So
Ah.
I was busy just going through my day. And
Well, while we're waiting to get John back on too, it's a good time for you. You can answer the question, which is, what do you see as occurring with CRM in 2023?
yeah, you bet. You want me to jump right in and go with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the top level thing that I'm seeing. And it really kind of harkens back to the fact that the world's a bit different now in that companies are looking to their ERP solution as their back office platform and their CRM solution as their front office platform. And what we're seeing across the board is companies looking for that one fully integrated CRM platform suite that does marketing, sales, and service together and brings that full solution. And I think 10 years ago, people were willing to cobble together point solutions, but today companies are looking for one answer. Now, you couple that trend with the economic outlook coming ahead of us next year, I think there's going to be a lot of acquisitions. I think there's going to be a lot of consolidation. I think the definition of a CRM platform is going to grow through a whole series of acquisitions that companies like the three of us here are going to be making ahead of us that continue to grow that definition of the CRM platform through, again, acquisitions, as I said. That's one top level trend that I think is absolutely. The second one that I think is going to be happening ahead of us is all of these niche AI solutions that have developed in the CRM space over the last 5 to 10 years. They're going to be part of that consolidation as well. And AI is just more than ever going to be so embedded into everything we're doing. I was just on a demo, just as we were, unfortunately, as I was being a bad guest and I was on another call, I was getting a demo of this really cool AI technology that does a whole ton of insights around your email stream and what your emails with your clients tell you that you've always wanted to know. I see that coming back as a very standard part of the platform ahead of us, of the CRM platforms ahead of us. And of course, that comes into the communication channels. So so if you look at AI, digital communication, and the widening of CRM platform definition, those are the key trends that I see happening next year.
JT?
Yeah, hopefully I can stay connected for more than 5 minutes here. Thanks for the. So what's CRM in 2023 and beyond? I think is it is really going back to some of the basics that were from 20 years ago or more. Is that it really is putting the customer at the center of the relationship. It's expanding relationships. It's expanding the engagements, the positive engagements, maximizing positive engagements with the customers and their customers. And to do that, I think there are 3 pillars: intelligence and AI. There's efficiency as part of that, and automation. And I think when you put all those things together, you have better relationships. But I feel like we're often forgetting what the other side of CRM is, the M in it, which is to help sales teams maximize their efficiency and their knowledge so that they can connect to the customers in the best way. I'm not a fan of the storytelling because I think ChatGPT is storytelling at scale, and CRM is much more about the direct engagement. Storytelling is a one-to-many type of metaphor, and engagement is much more one-to-one. And we want to get back to that.
So actually, Rob, this is just specific, just to answer Ed Schlesinger's question. He kind of said, when you mentioned radical simplification, he said of what? So can you just elaborate a little bit on that so we can get
Yeah, I think I would pick up a little on what Clint was saying. I think the CRM space in the last 2 years became very messy with a lot of extra bespoke components layered on, new people wanting to claim the mantle of we're the new system of engagement and everything else is a behind the scenes data repository. And I think it just became very difficult to really figure out the goal of CRM, which in my mind is how do you best serve the customer by making your salespeople effective?
Yeah.
And customers, we all know this today, the engagement starts much later in the process, and the salespeople have a different role, which is educate, teach, be a trusted advisor. This is not about linear, customer acquisition from the old days. It's about understanding how to engage with highly educated customers who come in with a real sense of what they want to do, and they're looking for you to share stories about best practices of clients who've been successful, industry leaders. They want to talk in the voice of customers like them that are in their industry. So it's a lot more about just deeper education. I also want to pick up another point on radical simplification is it isn't anymore about a journey from front office to back office. It's all in one suite today. And I agree, as Clint said, when you talk about things like subscriptions, how to sell subscriptions and manage subscriptions through the life cycle, that's collapsing a lot of the previous distinctions between back office and front office. So when I say radical simplification, I mean we're moving away from multiple components to simplified suites that work end to end. And as we work end to end across these, a lot of the complexity goes away. And we start to just think about solving a problem from the revenue capture piece all the way through to fulfillment. And I call it simplification because it takes a lot of the noise out of what entered CRM in the past couple of years, which was, well, is CRM like sales engagement? Is it marketing? It's all of those things built into a simple suite that solves problems by industry. And that's why I think it's, a lot of engineering has been done to make the problem simpler, not harder to implement.
All right. So one of the things that it's sort of plagued CRM and for the last several years with pretty much starting with the rise of CX as some sort of entity has been just clarity. All right. Just sheer clarity, right? Meaning definition. So I've seen time and time again,
Are we going to have the CRM versus CX debate?
It's not a debate. No, this is clarity. Okay? That's why I'm saying you guys are well positioned to bring clarity. Okay. And the clarity is the definitions of these things, because you have engagement too. I've seen CX and engagement used interchangeably. I've seen CRM used interchangeably with CX used interchangeably with the other. I mean, they're all just kind of thrown out there. Everybody makes a claim about X, Y, and Z. All of you have parts of all of them, and they're all distinct. Okay, so I'd like to know, because you are recognized leaders and it's going to have an impact on people, how do you distinguish between CRM, CX, CE? Because 2023, without that clarity, is just going to be another, as we say in Yiddish, mishigas, mess, right? So
and CE is customer engagement, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. So any one of you guys just sort of pick it up and roll.
I've always taken the perspective that CRM is the tech, and CX is the outcome, right? That's how I've kind of rationalized it in my head. And boy, what is old is new again, right? How many times over the last 10 years have all of us here at the table grabbed a hold of the latest meme in the marketplace to try and explain to everybody that, no, now it's really important, and this is really groundbreaking, and this is really different. But in reality, behind the scenes, we're trying to accomplish the same outcomes but just newer, faster, and stronger. For me, CRM is the technology. Customer engagement and customer experience are the outcomes of the technology. That's how I approach it.
Okay.
Yeah, can I add to what Clint just said? And I think, Paul, you and I were talking about this some time ago, right? Like when CRM came to being, it was the promise of CRM was the outcome of CX. And over the last 20 years, I think it sort of became more about, again, sales management, sales dashboard, the forecasting, and making sure that the finance people have what they need. And we sort of like lost that promise. But to everything that's been said, like I sort of feel that we are now starting to get back into that CRM, the single source of truth, as people were saying. But it's really the outcome is customer experience, right? And customer experience is not just in sales. It is for every interaction that happens, whether sales, marketing, service. Like, for example, I think there's a lot being said about supply chain disruptions impacting customer experience. Like that also is like end to end, right? We talk about that. So ultimately, and it's all about customer experience, customer engagement. Those are interchangeable. Like experience is a better term for engagement. But ultimately, customers are demanding that of us, of our brands, of the brands that they interact with. And it's where there's a research study that 84% of the time customers will actually choose to do business with a brand if they've had a bad experience. But that experience can be in any department. It's not just with sales. So I think the definition for me of CRM, I think it was rightly said, Clint, it's the tech, but the outcome is the experience that we're all looking to provide.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. Maybe one small modification there I would make is I think CX is the battleground. Like customer
that's a good point, Rob.
experience is the battleground, just like operational efficiency is a battleground.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's a category. It's a category or battleground where you need to distinguish yourself through using CRM, which I think is commonly thought of as a technology enabler, and customer engagement is a tactic. It's like customer engagement is one of those tactics to say, okay, I'm going to improve my outcomes by basically staying focused on engaging with my customer across all channels or using. So it's sort of, CX has been talked about for a long time as, it's just, and when a CEO stands up and says, we're going to be a customer experience leader, that's sort of similar to them saying, we're going to be the operational efficiency leader in our industry, right? It's a battleground, and we're building tech to help enable you to win. That's how I think about it.
Okay.
Hey,
Yeah, I think that.
Oh, go ahead, John. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think that if you just look at it, CRM is a segment that was created. It's kind of an artificial category, of course, and it had the history of being a system of record, so that sales teams could manage their relationships and their forecasts, and service desks people and like agents everywhere, and also in marketing. And then because that segment was becoming mature and more defined by analysts and pundits and the consumers, of course, then CX was just a way of keeping CRM, the name, alive, and just saying, oh, we have a new market segment, it's CX, but it's the same thing. And
Yeah.
it's a holistic strategy for a company, and CRM and CX and CE are tools to help support it. But more than just tools like software tools, the CRM companies have strategies to help because they have use cases, they have references, they have customers that are pushing the bar, and it kind of moves the whole industry forward into much more of a what you'd call a customer engagement, customer relationship, or just generally a customer friendly environment.
I'll throw out a thought in here, if you don't mind me double dipping and going one more time here.
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful discussion for folks like us to talk about, is this term an outcome, or is it a strategy, or is it a battleground, or is it a technology? Because it really helps us as CRM thought leaders tune our message to our audience. But let me tell you, if there's one thing I learned over the last 20 years, there's no point in trying to teach customers to call it anything other than CRM. There's really, it's a colossal waste of time to say to them, oh, no, it's not CRM, it's open source CRM, or it's not CRM, it's social CRM, or it's not CRM, it's customer experience management. I find that they all just kind of look at you going, okay, sure, whatever, but can I buy that CRM stuff you got? And I think you can't ignore that practical reality.
I do think, though, I have to say, like, because I am relatively new to this industry, I do find that CRM does get pigeonholed as the sales, like to your point, like, oh, it's in the sales side. And I find that at least in the last year and a half, there's a lot of conversation happening that CRM is not just for sales. Like, and this is why customer experience becomes an important battleground, like you said. It's an important word, because then you sort of say it's yes, it started with sales, but you've got to connect the dots between marketing and service and supply chain and finance. And that's what it broadens the definition of CRM, because for some reason it's gotten pigeonholed for sellers to understand their customers. But it is more than that. Like, you can't, like, a customer does not want marketing campaign when they're having a bad customer experience information, right? So that cross section is so important. And I think that's where, to your point, the customer is going to decide what they call it, but they are hungry for that connection and taking it out of just sales.
And
That's
a lot of
probably the
times
one area
the
that I've
buyers
found the most
are,
success is widening the definition of CRM to be more than just sales. I would agree with that, but trying to get my customers to ever say anything other than CRM.
No, you're right. Yeah.
You know, it's just an uphill battle.
I agree, Clint, and I think that the buyers sometimes of CRM aren't really maybe even thinking of CRM. This is like the lines of business. They want a marketing tool, or they want a customer service tool, and they're not holistically possibly putting it together, possibly by organizational design, that have histories of segmentation in their own companies and how they buy. But as you start getting into the larger companies, especially IT companies, or people who have a bigger purview, then it comes CRM. And those are the conversations that we want to have as thought leaders. We want to have it with the people who are looking at a bigger remit or bigger purview of the whole customer experience side. And that goes all the way down to employees. It goes to everybody in the company, and finance, as Neha said, and just different divisions. Everyone needs to be focused on the customer in a company, but the buyers have been segmented over time.
But don't you find that those walls are breaking down? Sorry, Rob, I talked over you.
No, that's all right. Brent, I want to go back to your original question on CRM in 23 for a second, because I think this debate or this discussion about sort of, all right, we fragmented the definition over the past couple of years in an attempt to move the whole industry forward. It was like, well, maybe technology decisions and company transformation will happen faster if we get hyper granular about how we, define each. And I agree with Clint. Like, everyone comes back and says, you guys are just coming up with Silicon Valley speak, when the truth is, like, this is all CRM. But I think the notion of CRM, the big fundamental change along, in my view, with this simplification, is there's a lot more conversations about data flows than there ever were. It's much less about applications now. You could argue that most players in the industry basically have built applications that do the same things. flavors. It's now about, can you get the data to the person who on your team, sales, service, commerce, marketing, who gets to the customer first? And if the data that you provide is actionable and can be leveraged by execution apps, by any of those customer facing people in the most efficient way, you'll be more competitive. And so I think that started in 21 and 22. I think it's taking center stage in 23. Everybody's going to be talk to me about how you flow data back office to front office, industry specific flows, how you manage the data, how you secure it, how you create data sanctuaries, how you do private sharing agreements, what clouds you run on, how secure your clouds. Those are the things that I think are going to be front and center for a lot of customers now, because they're tired of talking about feature X versus feature Y. Everybody basically has the same features.
I think that's a really key point. I'm seeing this more and more. Industry specific solutions are the hot topic in our customers. And the way I think about it is the tech has finally caught up to the vision, in my opinion. I mean, there's always a certain aspect where the vision leads the tech to a certain degree. But boy, when I started doing this back in 1999, the gap between the tech and the vision was ridiculous. It was hard. I mean, there was a whole industry around closing that gap, and in terms of implementation partners and stuff like that. Today, it's really close. And now you can start getting to where we've solved the technology problems, all the wiring, infrastructure, plumbing. Now let's really get to the things that are unique to your business and your industry. And that's just coming more and more and more. So I strongly agree that I might shift my opinion on my CRM predictions.
Can I just add, it's contextual based data. It's the context is so important, right? You can have data and 100% agree that is like when we talked about CX as the battleground, we find it is the state data. And I think there's in the chat, there's a whole conversation about CDP versus CRM, which is a whole another conversation I'd love to get into. But the thing is, without the data and the data flow between all of these departments, you're providing a very siloed approach to customer experience. So that is why it is so critical. But what we find is you've got to provide the context aware. And so the contextual data is what they're looking for. And then the other thing, and I think John was sort of touching upon it on the employee experience side, because it is about surfacing the data in the context at the right time, even to the employees, right? In the flow of their work, like we talk about, because they don't want, like, if you think about efficiency, and we say at Microsoft, we have a saying, we say happy employees help happy customers, because employees need the data and the context in what they're working on. And that's what then creates this. So it is about data, it is contextual data, right in at the right time when they need it. And that's why AI becomes so, like, this is where that gap is closing. Because now that you have data, then you can do machine learning on it. You can really democratize AI and make AI small bite size to help a seller, help a marketer, help a service agent, which is, it's not a big, machine science, like a big project. It's like demystifying AI. That's the big thing we are starting to see in the innovation in CRM.
One of the things I'd like to see, my personal definition of CRM is I want a customer personal assistant. I want my CRM to tell me something I didn't already know about my customers and tell me what to do next.
Yep.
That's ultimately what I want out of the whole thing.
That's right.
Yeah, and I think that AI should be applied to the data going into systems, because the data in poorly implemented systems can be pretty bad and can't do forecasts, you can't do customer engagement
totally.
right away. And I think that's one of the things that we'll see in the future. But I agree about data flows. I agree about data, and data is going to be the biggest strategy going
and
forward.
So for us, the next, for us at least, and it's this huge, like, we talk a lot about incomplete data into the CRM, right? We talk about, if it is about the data flow, that means your CRM needs the data. And I know at some companies, they have like They have days that is all spent in feeding the beast, which we call feeding the CRM. So the thing is you are right, John. It is about applying technology and AI to extract the data out from where the people are already working and automatically feed the CRM. Because then you have data in CRM. There's enough data in CRM if you connect the dots between sales, marketing, supply chain, service. If you actually do enough of that 360, you have enough data, then you can, of course, add and surround more data, and you can go crazy about it with the CDP. But the whole point is, how do you minimize the effort of in adding data into a CRM? And how do you take that burden away from the marketers, the sellers, the service agents, and automate the data entry? That is one big area where I think we'll see a lot of innovation.
And on that note, I feel like I'm committing a crime having to cut this great conversation off, because Paul and I always talk about the best shows that we have are the ones where we say basically nothing. And so being able to toss out one question, mind you, this started with one question, and it morphed into this really great meaty discussion. And it's not just on screen, but have you seen the comments that are coming in? So it's just a great conversation. And unfortunately, we're going to have to let this great panel go, but we appreciate Neha, Rob, Clint, and John for taking the time to join us. And hopefully you guys, will you join us next year in something? Because
yes,
we got to keep.
And I'll even be on time.
We'll put
Brent, we were just getting started. You gotta stop. We were just getting started.
We were just getting started. I want to reconvene the four of us over cocktails and keep this conversation going. This is a good one.
That's what we're here for.
I'll send you the whiskey. I have a new one for you.
We're here to bring people together. So on that note, thank you.
Your place.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Have a great holiday, and we will
My house.
talk to you in 2023, because we really have to see what happens with CRM.
See you, everyone.
Yes, thank you so much.
Bye.
I'll see you
Bye-bye.
next time at my
Happy
house.
holidays.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
All right, that was
Bye.
an awesome way
Bye.
to get this started.
That was
guess-
amazing.
Guess what? I didn't even get a chance to shout out see what I'm wearing?
Oh, you got the hat and the thing on. Cool.
I got the PPN merch on, folks. This is still our concept merch. We're trying a few things out, but anyway, Paul will be getting his shortly. Let me know what you think. I know it's not a lot. Yeah, but give us an
We're
idea.
trying to keep it as elegant as we are, which means not at
Oh my
all.
God, really?
But, yeah, it's not to say.
I'm
Meaning it's immediately disposable when you get it.
I'm just glad I have something to wear when the Rams are 4-9. This is kind of
That's
anyway.
right.
Now for our next panel, we're gonna bring on three very soft-spoken, mild-mannered
Yeah, that's the word.
folks who may have an opinion or two on what CRM in 2023 will be like. We're just going to bring them all on at once and get into it. Mr. Mike Fawcett, Mr. Dennis Pombrand, and Mr. Ray Wang. Thank you guys for joining us, man. This is great.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, good to be
Hey,
here.
everyone. Whoa.
Got a little
Oh,
static.
that's bad.
Yeah, I think we're good now. All right, guys. You heard what was going on. It was like I said. It was almost. I felt like I should be locked up for breaking into that conversation. But it's only because you guys have stuff to say too. So why don't we pick up and start with Mike, go to Dennis, and end up with Ray. 2023 in CRM, what do you see? Anything different? Anything major? Anything that we should be talking about? Mike, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I have to answer longer than that, right? So,
Your video was way longer than that, by the way.
it was way longer than I know. But I said I used up the other time that Alan didn't use. I mean, that seems reasonable. No, so for years I've been tracking and doing research around this shift in customer buyer behavior, and I've run survey after survey and collected data. Started at IDC, did it all through G2, and in fact G2 is still running a similar survey, and this gap, it just keeps getting worse and worse because you've got behavior change on the customer front and you've got this kind of continued process inside of most businesses, and we've made it perhaps even worse because we just keep making tools to make what they're doing faster, bigger, louder, whatever, right? So we have all these point solutions, and what do? They fragment data, and they don't help change. They help you continue to do what you're doing that's not working and do more of it, but nonetheless. So I think this is finally starting to be, an obvious issue. And I've talked to a lot of sales leaders this year and a lot of, sales people, and, they're saying, wow, sales is harder than it ever was. And it keeps getting harder every year. And, marketing, same thing. The leads are tougher to get. They aren't as good, blah, all those things. And I, I feel like now, and by the way, that survey that I ran, one of my favorite data points that always gets people's attention is the question we asked about customer. We asked the customer, when do they contact the vendor salesperson? And 68% of them this year said they contact the salesperson after they've made their decision, which is somewhat problematic if you're not the salesperson that they contact. But, so I think we've got to see a few things, and I'll try to keep this really focused here, but real-time customer data across all silos. So that's the growing up of CDP. And I love when she talked about context and relevance. I think that's absolutely correct. That baseline data, the real-time data underneath that needs to feed into all of these functions is really, really key to helping build this right context and relevance. I think marketing has to move to real-time interactive journeys and not static journey maps like we've done in the past. It's not a map. Nobody follows it. You can try, but the customer won't. So I think it's time we finally start to go, okay, let's build tools that collect real-time data about behavior and suggest the next best action based on that behavior, because you have an understanding of the individual, not of the segment. And then I think sales has to move to a guided discovery, interactive real-time model where they can bring anybody in and have them work with a model that's, built on top of machine learning that learns and grows, of how to ask the right questions in the right context with your prospect to help understand their problem and then deliver the right solution. And then I think part of that marketing change was individualization instead of personalization, because I'm all of a sudden hearing this thing, contextually irrelevant personalization. I love that one because I've been getting that forever. Right. And it's absolutely true. I buy one thing for a gift and all of a sudden I get, slammed for 4 years with the thing that I already bought, by the way. And I didn't want it for me to begin with. And then last, the one thing that I love is this move in service to collaborative incident management. I think that's absolutely critical, away from tiered models and into a model that leverages the collab tools we have to bring the right answer around the right problem at the right time using the real-time data. So there, I said it, and I did it in 5 minutes. Well, all right, 5 minutes.
Dennis.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, well, this is a real interesting show so far. In 23, I think what we'll begin to see is the evolution of two critically important new modules. One is called Vendor GPT. The other is Customer GPT. And they'll just talk to each other. And we'll be out of the picture.
Nice robots.
All right, next.
I think,
yeah, right.
But perhaps a little more seriously, I think while data is really, really important, it's important to think about the plumbing and getting data around. I think we're still a fair piece away from providing CRM that people can not think about and just do their jobs with. And I think we've made great strides. And I think the strides that I'm seeing over the last few years is the increasing sophistication of industry-specific CRM. And I think that's something that's going to continue evolving. And I think some of the benefits from that are that because the CRM is based on platform technology, there will be fewer vertical market products. I remember 20 years ago, I think it was Siebel that had in excess of 20 vertical market products because they were all hard coded. I think vertical market products today are things that can be more broad based because the users can do an awful lot of configuring and changing the way the systems behave based on the way their users behave. So I'm looking at all of this through the lens of customer GBT. How is it going to be better for the customer? What do we have to do to make things better for the customer? And again, it's important to talk about data flows and CDP and all the rest of that. But to a particular audience, to the audience that buys CRM is partly those kinds of technologists, but it's also partly people that have a job to do and have revenue and profit goals. End of story.
Right.
Ray, take it away wherever you
Yeah. So there are three big concepts we've been talking about. One is infinite ambient orchestration, the ability to bring journeys together into one location. They're intention driven, focused on next best action. We've also been talking a lot about mass personalization at scale for some time, and that's really the personalization aspect. And so today we have this thing with data lakes, right? And CDPs, we dump all the data somewhere. We don't have a place to dump the journeys, right? We have content that needs to be surfaced up somewhere. And then we've got engines like pricing engines and configuration and all this kind of stuff that's happening. And so first time ever, live here on CRM Playaz, we're going to introduce this concept called dynamic scenario generation. And what dynamic scenario generation is, you take those four concepts and they come together. And just like you're in the metaverse or you're in a holodeck, Mike's smiling, he's great. Dennis looks like he's pensive, thinking about something. I'm going to serve up a different scene. Right? These scenes pop up dynamically and they happen. And in a 3D environment, that's what has to happen if you're going to be interactive in these kind of scenarios, right? And so we're working our way towards dynamic scenario generation. And we think these dynamic scenes are going to be important because, we dump the data in one spot. We have the journey sitting all over here, right? Our content strategies all over here. And our signals are like our engines are all over, they're a mess, right? And
that's my idea of vendor GPT.
So vendor GPT, as Dennis mentioned, is going to happen, and it's going to bring all this stuff together. So that's the wacko, super out there, futurist kind of idea. So, all right, cool. And there's my point of view, Mitch. And so that is what we're talking about in one way. But there's the practical stuff, right? I mean, I look at B2B sales, right? For example, like why the hell is that in CRM? It really doesn't belong. There's only 20,000 accounts, 5 people each that you really care about. That's 100,000 people. Right? Okay, maybe there's 1 million people top that's in here. So it's not about sales anymore. We see RevOps picking up, and I think the RevOps space is super hot, but there's a little bit more to that. And I think what it is it's the ability to guide the contents, the ability to serve up the things people want to see, the ability to kind of then form the relationship, bring the event. And so I think RevOps meets integrated marketing and customer success management is another area that's going to pick up over time, right? How do we bring the relationship back? And we talk about this every 10 years. What happened to the R in CRM? Oh, I don't know. Like, so how do we actually create those moments for the relationships to happen? And so that's one other aspect. And then there's another one that's a little bit different, which is I think we're just swimming in so much content, and so much content is being created that we're just ignoring everything at this moment. And so we keep creating digital content, digital media, digital channels. It's being consumed. And this is something I said a long, long time ago, and I had to go back and look. We're competing for time and attention. And because we're competing for time and attention, that whole notion of contextual relevancy is even more important than ever. And it's those outside signals, like I'm wearing a watch, someone's wearing a Fitbit, someone's wearing something else, an Oura ring, fine. It's how much am I going to be willing to give you my context so that you give me a better experience? And so far, that exchange sucks. It's really bad. And the first vendor that figures that out, I think is going to win, right? So I'm giving you just enough and you're giving me just enough back. And we're going to keep doing that until we have a relationship. And I think that's where we're going to see these dynamic feedback loops become important in Dennis's vendor GPT, right? That vendor GPT 10,000 is going to pop up and we'll be in good shape. But then the last thing that I think is a little more important, and I'll just wrap up real quick. I really think that for all the vendors who, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but were afraid to do physical events, you lost out. People wanted the connections. People wanted the serendipity. Sitting at Amazon reInvent with 55,000 people sounded really scary, but the meetings that were in between and the small conversations that were happening, you didn't have to go to all the big events. It's just the fact that everybody was there and you could have that conversation. I think we're going to see a lot more smaller field events pop up. So that's it.
Okay. So given that you guys are long time analysts, meaning you go back quite a ways.
I think you
let's
just said
say-
we're old, by the way.
No, you have to reach
It's like
70.
venerable, so.
You have to reach 70 for that. Then you're allowed to
Okay.
be
I got a
ven-
little
then you,
ways.
then you
Not-
get to,
not far.
then you get venerable status. Brent actually has a certificate he hands out when you hit that. So
Coming for
We
you.
get a
So
hat
here's-
too.
Something to look forward to.
well, we'll give you a VPPN hat at that point,
Ooh.
right? So here's the thing, Bill. We all go back to the earliest days of CRM, and it had a purpose, right? And its purpose at that time was sales, marketing, customer service, let's say support in some way. Forget detail for a moment, right? One way or the other, the idea was to make that better, to make it work better, to get more relevance from the actions that were taken, to understand things better, to make your relationships with your customers better without you losing your shirt in the bargain, and so on and so forth. And that was, put in, let's say, simple terms, that was pretty much it. And I remember my mantra, which still holds really, was from the beginning: if a customer likes you and continues to like you, they'll continue to do business with you. If they don't, they won't. Right. And that pretty much sums up, let's say, 97% of the way people deal with companies. Right. I like you. Doing what I'm getting the job done. I need to get done. I'll stick around until you do something that pisses me off and I don't like you anymore. So here's the thing, though. If you listen to what everybody from the vendor panel through now, what we've talked about is something, and this may be the evolution of complexity of the world here, but we've talked about things that are far more complex, far more, let's call it granular, far more difficult, and yet I don't think at its basic, and it kind of goes to Jason Lundy's thing to some degree, there are some basics that still need to be met, because the purpose of CRM, let's say this, to the extent, for example, CRM adoption has been a problem since day one, still a problem, right? I mean, it's not like it changed in 25 years. CRM changed, but adoption hasn't, right? So to the same extent, what CRM's purpose was didn't change, but the way it was adopted has. But its purpose, meaning make things better in these particular ways, hasn't changed. So how do you, and when you deal with an individual, to one of the vendor points, I don't remember who it was, they're not listening to all the details. They're listening to, what do you got that does what I need, right? So, and how does that help me and my company? Meaning both. How do you answer that, given the fact we're dealing with things that are fundamentally far more complex, but also can either provide amazing results or totally confuse the picture? So how do you think about that? Because we're heading into pivotal time, when 2023, 2024, at least for me, it is semi-retirement, right? So, but you get the point, right? How do you start thinking? How do you start presenting that in a consumable way so that people are not confused and do see the benefit of the fact things are getting more complex and the solutions are more complex, but the benefits are still there, and potentially the implementation of the solution is still not as complex as it seems to be? How do you deal with it?
Well, Paul,
Anyway.
in my recollection of all the different changes I've seen in the industry, there needs to be an order of magnitude benefit of the new over the old, whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, people tend to be skittish about adopting something new, and some of that was actually shown by Daniel Kahneman in some of his work with Amos Tversky. Back then, they were saying the benefit had to be about twice as great. But if you look at what's happening, or what has happened in our industry, client server didn't become really important until you could show an order of magnitude or more benefit over mainframes. And similarly, I don't think internet-based applications were taken seriously until they had an order or two of benefit over client server. So I think the question becomes, how do I as a vendor demonstrate clearly to my prospective customer what the benefit is and how great the benefit is?
Well, and I'd add one thing to that, Dennis, too, and that is that you also have to have the capability to ask the right questions to even understand what value the customer wants out of that.
Yeah.
And that's a baseline problem right now, because if you make that assumption, I know better than you, then you've already lost, right?
No, I know better than you.
All right, guys. Once again, I have to commit a serious crime. I don't know if this is a felonious level or not, but I'm gonna have
Felonious monk?
Yeah.
Hey, if it's felonious monk, there is nothing wrong with that. I'll tell you that right now. Thanks, guys. I mean, this is great. Once again, Paul and I are just sitting back and relaxing.
This is the easiest shows ever.
It's been great. And also, I got to tell you, you guys in the comment section are killing it. We're closing on 300 comments. We haven't even been an hour and a half. It's like kind of crazy. So this is really great. We'll keep this going in 2023. I didn't even get a chance to ask you guys like all sorts of questions, and I won't be able to do it here. But I will.
Lightning round. It's a new year. Get the gear.
That's right, Ray.
Yeah,
We're going to count on you to handle those. You can get anything done in 5 minutes. I don't know how you do it, but you can do it.
Hey, Brent, it's a new year. Get the gear. That's all I have to say.
All right. Thanks again. Have a great holiday season. We will definitely be talking.
Wonderful to see you all.
Totally
great to
love
see
you
you.
guys.
Happier.
Yep.
Take care, guys.
Kisses to all of you guys.
Well, I'll just leave it at the bro hugs for that. All right.
Fair enough. I'll throw the kisses. I'm good.
Just we're getting, apparently we're breaking LinkedIn and even possibly a little bit of YouTube or something.
Yeah,
So,
I see a lot of enormous problems on LinkedIn.
yeah. So once again, just to let everybody know, if you are having issues on LinkedIn, you probably have better luck on YouTube. YouTube.com/@CRM Playaz/streams. That'll get you to the right place. I'll just leave this up for a second. Man, what do you think about the conversation so far?
Oh, it's extraordinary. I mean, it's interesting when you listen to vendors conversing, and these are, to Clint's point, they would be the thought leaders, really. So you listen to vendor thought leaders, and then you listen to analyst thought leaders speak, and they speak in very different kinds of concepts, right? Because on the one hand, the thing that fascinates me the most about everybody's conversation, though, is everyone sees one way or the other, meaning Nate called it back to basics. Ray sees the dynamic scenario side of things, but everyone sees an evolution of CRM in some direction. There's nothing static about it, right? And that's a little striking, because a lot of CRM for the last several years, even though there's been incremental change, has been pretty much static, right? And it's been, and again, incremental. These are actually fairly big turns that each of them, they're all talking about. So I'll be very curious to see how many of them come through. Chat GPT told me that CRM is going to do more automation and more mobile and more personalization.
Wow.
At first, yeah, isn't that amazing? I know. Well, at first it said, well, I'm an AI. I only am trained through 2021, so I can't predict. So I hit try again. And they said, okay, I'll try. And then it literally just added the word more in front of the most standard crap I've ever seen.
All right. Well, that's an interesting way to bring on folks who definitely aren't going to be talking crap. I mean, these folks.
Oh, these are leaders. These are hardcore leaders. They know how to do the work. They know how to think about the strategies and solutions. They know how to inspire and train the people. They know how to, and they also know how to, by the way, push when they need to push, meaning if they need to tell people not this way, they get the buy-in, because that's why they're all in very different areas, very, very excellent, superb, in fact, leaders.
I'm going to roll them out and let you.
Well, we kind of did the intros again,
Yeah.
so we just roll them in so we can get moving.
Absolutely. Stephanie Boyer.
Hey, Stephanie, welcome. Yay.
Thank you.
Fiona, welcome for
Hi.
Thanks for staying up.
Now, Mark, we're having issues with Martha's camera. I'm going to bring her back out until we get that taken care of, because I think that was also causing a bit of an echo issue there. But we'll see if we get her straightened out. But in the meantime, thank you both for joining us. As you can tell, there's been quite the discussion going on screen and in the chat room. Actually, there's been three, because there's the public comments, there's the broadcast, and then there's the private chat. There's like multi-dimensional conversation going on, which is actually pretty cool. But thank you guys for joining us, and I would love for each of you to take a minute or two to give us your thoughts on what 2023 is going to bring for CRM in general. Do you see it being a game changer? That things are changing? Is it staying the same? I haven't heard anybody talk about the potential. We got a lot of feedback. The potential recession that might have an impact on all this stuff. So, yeah, we got a bit of feedback. I don't know exactly who it is. I'm going to take a shot. I'm just going to put Stephanie on mute, and that seemed to, well, Fiona, you went on mute too. So, Fiona, why don't you come off mute and tell us it was you?
Okay. Yeah, was it me? I was on mute. How was it me? Anyway, okay,
No.
I'll be real quick so you can then move over to Stephanie. But firstly, I just wanted to say, every time I listen to Ray Wang, I hear a new expression, dynamic scenario generation, DSG. Is that Ray Wang? Is that his thing that he's coined? I loved it. The other
You
thing
heard it
is,
her first, though. The big part, you heard it here first.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
right.
And I always do. Whenever you guys speak to Ray Wang, I always hear something new, without a doubt.
Oh, he's
And the other
he's
thing-
probably got another 30 or 40 in the hopper waiting.
So also, Kirsty Tupper put a fantastic comment in LinkedIn. She was asking, I think she was asking Ray, do your customers even want to engage with you? Are they looking for a relationship with you? Of course, I work in the sports industry, exclusively in the sports industry. So our customers are fans, they're fans, and they 100% want a relationship. They want way more than a relationship. But okay, what do I see in 2023? I'm going back to your chat GPT, Paul, because I say I want more, and it's more of the basic stuff. I mean, it was great listening to those vendors. It was great listening to those analysts, but I'm telling you here on the floor, making it happen with our clients, I need more of the basics. I need more data standards, more data movement, more email marketing even, I just need more of some of that basic stuff, because we as an industry are still not cracking it. We are, with some of the really elite rights owners, but as a general principle, we're still struggling.
Okay, Stephanie.
Great, thank you. Well, I see two major areas, really. The first one is that whole idea of like automation, AI. And then the second part of that is along the lines of the alignment, the transparency, the communication between the different groups. One of the big challenges that I've seen, and it's really disturbing, is that you get these bloated, inaccurate pipelines. Whether it's salespeople that are just not entering the information correctly, or what I've seen, and very disturbing, is that managers are telling their sales teams to put in fake deals because it makes them look better, right? And everybody's moving around so much that nobody even notices that it was fake, because by the time they're held accountable for it, they're gone. They're in another place. And that's leading to inaccurate forecasts. There's no accountability around that. And if I hear my students or if I hear my friends saying that this is happening, it's tough, because the salespeople feel like they have to follow the rules that their managers are giving them, putting in these fake deals, but it's disrupting the entire company because they can't forecast accurately. But what I'm seeing with this new contracting economy is that more and more people are going to be leaning in to CRM. I think it's going to be a major focus. It's going to be a huge focus for salespeople just to get the internal resources that they need to get that engineer to be able to come on the call with them, to be able to go travel to a place that they want to go to. So I think that they are going to be able to lean into this a lot more, but it has to be automated because salespeople don't want to enter it in, or it's inaccurate. So that automation is going to lead to more accuracy, where you're going to be able to use AI to draw some insights, customer insights, how to score leads, how to qualify, understand the customer needs, where to invest your time, what you should even say to the customers when you're reaching out. And I think that we have to think about what are the opportunities to provide value for salespeople and to provide value to managers so that they actually want to use these tools, so that they're getting those insights that are meaningful because the data is accurate and meaningful. And then, of course, the transparency and aligning all of these together. And I could talk about that some more.
Hey,
So
I want
go
to
ahead.
bring in Martha and see if I can see her, but she says
There
she
you are.
can. You hear us now?
Martha, can you hear us?
Doesn't look like you can.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Can you hear us?
I cannot hear you for some reason.
Okay. You might want to check your audio sources. Oh, she can't hear me.
Let me
All
try
right,
to-
I'm gonna put her back into the green room, and I'll work with her from there. So
I think there are some network issues.
While you're doing that, can I just bring up something that Stephanie just highlighted, because this was talked about with your previous group prior to Ray's team, and that was the different definitions of CRM, because Stephanie went straight into sales automation, didn't she? When Stephanie, when you were talking about CRM for 2023, you went straight into traditional CRM software, contact management, Salesforce automation, whereas for us, for example, CRM isn't just about that. It's also about engagement with your end users and all the rest of it. So where you were getting to with your previous group, not the Ray group, the definition of CRM, I was loving that debate. And I was loving where you were getting to with Neha. I thought Neha was actually going to say, let's stop calling it CRM and use data as the lead word instead, and then put everything else on the end of that. And then, of course, Clint jumped in and said, we're never going to get our customers not to call it CRM. And of course, he has to say that because that's in the name of his business. He doesn't want to have to go through a rebrand. But I thought that was a fascinating discussion you guys were bringing up. And I'd love to see if in 2023, somebody can be brave enough to stop using the term CRM, because it causes so much confusion. And there's so much, Stephanie went straight into Salesforce automation. I was thinking about communication to a mass audience. There's just so much. So I would love to see somebody be brave enough to do that in 2023. And Paul, I remember a fantastic interview you did with Jujhar Singh in Washington, DC some years ago. And he said, we don't even call it CRM at Microsoft anymore. It's intelligent customer engagement. So anyone want to do that in 2023? I'd love to see it.
Well, it could be all our parting shot, right? We'll just
bring back Ray Wang. Bring back Ray Wang to come up with it.
That's right.
So, I have another thought just about this whole idea of transparency and using this across different systems, right? And there's this challenge where I don't think that everybody really knows the process of customer acquisition. Everybody doesn't really know the business model that's in place. And you have everyone using different systems, right? So everyone should be on some kind of similar system. You might have the marketing team on Marketo. Salesforce is maybe being used by the sales team. Service is using Siebel, Microsoft Dynamics. And they're not on the same system, right? And so a service person or customer success is sending a lead over to the sales team, and then there's an email and it's getting lost or it has to get entered in. And I'm not really seeing enough of this like tight integration between all these different systems. So they either need to be on the same system or they need to have a serious integration where it's just very tight so that they can all be working together. Things are not going to get lost, because these are the problems. It's creating inefficiencies and it's frustration. And then it's inaccurate when people are just entering this on their own. And then you're lacking some of this accountability as well. So being on a similar system, having a similar idea of what a good client is, and making sure that that's aligned with what the sales team thinks is a good client, really taking the time to take these silos that we have and bring the silos together, get those verticals communicating, and thinking about that customer experience starts with the employee's experience using that system. So having a tool that they can all embrace is going to lead to a better future for everyone using these tools.
Nice. Okay. All right. Why don't we give another shot to bring it on Marta?
Sorry, guys. Thank you so much for having
And
me.
you
Sorry
hear
for
us
the
good?
trouble. But it was a
Yay.
huge storm. At the moment I had to connect and everything crashed. So sorry.
Don't worry about it. We're used to creating huge storms and things crashing.
That's right.
It
Don't
was
worry.
a CRM storm for sure.
So why don't you tell us, because everybody else has had a chance to kind of weigh in on what they see in store for CRM in 2023. So we would love to hear maybe if there's something you see like a game changer, not really anything different, or I don't know. Let us know what you think 2023 has in store.
Yeah. So what I truly believe is that CRM is at the core of any great customer experience. I'm a true believer that moving forward, we are going to experience more and more a channel-less CRM or channel-less customer experience. So it's all about being seamless. It's all about being effortless. It's all about making everything easy for the customer, first of all. So we need to ensure consistency independently of where our customers are. And this is now a must-have. And if we add this to the need of having to live in a cookieless world, the importance of first-party data is really predominant. So, but we also need to find smart way to collect those data, to only collect the data that really matters, and especially if we want to bring everything in-house and fuel our CDPs, and maybe apply great customer segmentation that in the end fuels personalization. I mean, this was already told, and I love the concept of simplification, because this is really the essence of what any company needs today. If you want to streamline and tear down silos among marketing, sales, and service, we need to be easy. We need to be easy for our customers, as well as we need to be easy for any back office agent, for anyone that is using the systems. So I love the idea that was thrown by Rob before, that it's about, in the end, a fewer vendors to rely on or to work with, in order to be more consistent and to be easy in terms of both employee experience and customer experience. So,
hey, Marta, you had a follow-up from Christy. She wanted you to explain what your definition of channelless is.
Channel. Okay, channelless, of course. Let's say that it's about not caring to build content for a specific channel, no matter if someone is interacting via WhatsApp or via social media or via a website. The customer doesn't have to realize what channel he's using, what channel he's on, because everything should seem so easy, so consistent, so connected, so effortless. And that is the essence of being channelless. So the channel has to disappear, because what is more predominant and prominent actually is how do we interact, right? Because if we say we have to build relations, we are delivering great experiences, the only way to do it is by being easy and by being consistent and by making everything very, very simple. Again, back to basics, but being simple is not an easy thing.
I like that. That's a t-shirt. Being simple is not an easy thing. You're so right. I mean, a lot of the complexity, if you're ahead of the game, if you're able to kind of hide the complexity from the folks who don't need to see it, but that still makes it very hard to deal with that stuff. So I love that. All right.
So
Paul,
I got something. So here's the thing. So you guys all have been on the ground doing this. You've trained people. You've worked with people. You've created strategies and programs and then executed well with all of them. You've done it for large companies. You've done it for small companies. You've done it, but you've been doing it for a while, and you've been doing it extremely well. All right. Now, one of the interesting things is, and it kind of goes to what you're talking about, Marta, with channelists to some degree, and is that over a period of time, we've seen an evolution, and sort of an evolution from multi-channel to omni-channel to channelists. Now I'm getting into multi-experience, not total experience, by the way. I think it's kind of a crock, but multi-experience, right? But that's what I want to bring up. The reason I want to bring it up is that where it differentiates itself from all the other things is that, in effect, it involves what's the word? Modalities, really. So, for example, you're not only interacting with a channel of some kind, or you're not only interacting with multiple channels, or you're not only interacting with whatever moves you at the moment, but your senses get involved too. Voice, for example. And, aside from the ridiculousness of the hype around ChatGPT, the value is it's starting to raise awareness again of conversational AI and things that are actually important. But we also have touch, right? And we're dealing there on security, on levels of security. We're dealing with touch. We're dealing with less smell and taste, but we're dealing with senses now too that are part of the way customers are now beginning to interact. Now, in not just your current experience, but more toward what you think your future experience will look like, will those things even matter in the slightest? Or will they be outliers? Or will they be something that becomes over time mainstream? Because ultimately we're talking about something, again, Jason Wong of Gartner is the person who coined multi-experience, MX. Is that something that you think your company, your customers, your whatever, your students will even care about at any point? Now, not necessarily even consciously, just in terms of the things they do day to day. That's the question.
So just to clarify, Paul, you're saying when you are integrating all of these senses, is that going to be a challenge?
Is people going to even care about doing that? Like, for example, when Fiona brought the point up about channelists, and to your point, Marta, I've also been a big advocate of that idea for a long time. But it's a perfect example. You still have to deal with things called channels, right? But your customers don't care about that. What they care about is communicating, right? And however that is, look, as we know, on every phone, right, I have hundreds of channels that I could communicate with. And I don't think about, today, well, I think I'll communicate with this one. I just go to whatever it is I need to do, to get whatever it is I need to get done, and I do it. I don't think channel, I think communicate, right? So, but now the other things that are starting to come into that are specifically at this point, voice and touch, right? Primarily, those are the big two. But again, customers not thinking channelists, customers thinking channelists, companies not. Are you going to have to think about voice and touch while your customers really are just using it, just because they're using it? Is it going to matter? Is it going to be important? Is it going to be not important? That's the question.
One of the first things that really comes to my mind when you're talking about this is this idea of cognitive resources, right? We only have so many cognitive resources. And that's how we can actively process the information. We only can tap into so much. So if it's putting more of a burden on that, then we could feel like we have this like role overload, and it could be overwhelming to try to keep up with all the different things that we need to now do. Now, if it's automated and it's using something and it's very easy, then it may not be able to do that. But we see some constructs in sales and marketing where the individual in their current role gets confused, or there's ambiguity of what they're really supposed to be doing. So that's where communication and training goes. But then also looking at how much are we demanding from the people that are using these systems, so that they can actually do the jobs. We always see these next shiny new thing that we have to do, and it's going to help. Like, how much is this thing actually helping? I think that's what we're going to have to take a really good look at.
Can I just add one thing there is more than the senses, I would like us to see more work on sentiment. I think understanding those qualitative elements, emotions, feelings, needs, etc., will get us a lot further than the senses piece, personally.
You mean when you say sentiment, are you also talking empathy, or you're talking the measurement of sentiment, so to speak, or identification?
Well, the understanding what it, so understanding, because we are still largely dealing with text, you know, however that text is delivered, we are still dealing with words as well. But what's the meaning behind the words? What's the sentiment behind it? So is it how is this person feeling? I would prefer to see some of that involved in our next step evolution. So if ChatGPT could start to understand, for example, sarcasm, I'm going to bring that up because I'm British, but you know, the underlying emotions behind what they're actually interrogating.
Yeah, well, and it's fair. You know, Qualtrics has acquired Clarabridge, which is a fantastic tool for sentiment, right? For sentiment analysis. They're genuinely the best tool I've ever seen for that, bar none, and scalable. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It was one of the smartest acquisitions Qualtrics made in the last decade.
All right, guys.
Marta, well, no,
Yeah.
give Marta a shot.
Oh, yeah, okay.
let me try to tell you. Okay, for what I see, voice is already a huge trend, and it will continue to grow, and it will continue to develop. Voice sentiment analysis, it's something that we are already doing and implementing at Henkel, for example. But one thing is also super important is how can we ensure customer proximity? For example, during the pandemic, even when we cannot see each other, we cannot touch each other, then we use VR, right? And we use VR to provide remote technical assistance. And when it's combined also with voice, then I guess there we are entering into another type of dimension. So I see for sure, I mean, more or less going forward, all the senses involved. And let's not forget that in the end, as part of multi-experience, we have also face-to-face experience where smell and taste are fully in. So.
Okay.
All right, evil person, Brent. Do your
I
thing.
know. Just call the cops. You know, I'm looking to see if they're on their way because I'm gonna have to break in again.
Just dial 911.
Okay, we'll move on. Ladies, thank you. This has been another great piece of this conversation puzzle we've had over the last hour and a half. Thanks, Marta. We're so glad that your video started. You know, the explosion didn't stop you. Fiona, it's been way too long since we saw you, so it's very good to see you and to hear from you. And Stephanie, you're the one teaching our future this, so it's all on you to make sure all this stuff happens.
That's right. It's up to
No
you,
pressure.
Stephanie. We'll be checking in with you every 30 minutes for the rest of your life.
All right.
We need more people doing this.
Have a great
All right,
night,
guys.
Stephanie.
Big hugs.
Thank you.
New year.
Big
Wow.
hugs.
Bye.
Wow. Thank you.
Bye.
Well, wow. This has been great so far.
It's been absolutely astounding. I mean, I'm usually bored by CRM.
Well, and we're going to bring on our final guest, but
Final two.
yeah, final two. Yeah. Because, the voice and the man, they're
That's right.
So I do think that I don't see anywhere in the world where people are going to stop using the term CRM.
No.
I don't see that. And vendors
Well,
who try not to, it's going to be kind of difficult.
The other side is to what end is it worth not using it? Right? I mean, there's no. I didn't get a chance to weigh in on that, but the reality is, what's the point of stuff? It's like saying, well, you know what? The Knights KNIGHT no longer really exist, so why use the term? Right. So I mean, because then we won't have any idea what a knight is if we don't use the term.
I mean, there's a lot of like CX. There's no one definition for that. I don't see that going on.
I think there's one definition. Mine.
Yeah.
Although mine does strongly resemble Bruce Temkin, so I think he and I are in close conjunction.
Yeah. Forget all those other. Yeah. Forget all those other people.
Who cares?
All right. So now it's like our regular. Do we start with the I'm Brent Leary thing again, or do we?
Nah.
Because we're on our regular time now.
However, we do have to end with a picture. You know that regardless.
Oh well, absolutely. And
did you see the new one?
There's a new one. Oh yeah, she said. Okay, yeah, I didn't. I don't have that one queued up.
Okay. Oh, too bad.
We'll
okay.
Go with mini classic instead of the newest one, but. So we're at the top of the hour. We got one more hour to go, and we've got, we got the Golden Smog who's going to join us shortly. That's Anand Thakur, also known as the Midas of Martech. And then we're going to end things with, at the end of the day, we got to end it with the one and only Bob Stutz. You think he might have something to say about some of this stuff?
No, you know what a quiet person he is.
But before we do that, let's do a pitch. Let's pitch. Right. Wait a minute. Why am I not seeing that? Let's pitch this. So, in the hot seat. Hey, this is the first time we're doing a executive roundtable under the guise of PPN.
That's right.
PPN, folks. Playaz Production Network. All right. So this
I just
Monday.
hold down my hair until I.
This Monday. The In the Hot Seat crew is going to be talking about blurred lines. I thought Robin Thicke was going to be the guest for this. But
I hope not. Especially not for that one.
No, yeah,
you definitely don't want him on for that one.
Sorry, Robin. Can't
you're not different blurred line.
Consumer experiences driving business customer expectations. That is going to be co-hosted by, I believe, Jody Spencer and Mike Fawcett. All I've been told is it's going to be a doozy.
All right, and then look, this show has been it's been unique. It's been evolving, and it's the subject matter is excellent, and they are pros at putting this thing together too. They have a unique model. It's a community model. So I don't remember if this number may not be accurate, but I think it is. They have 13 people, I think, who might be hosts on this show, and it varies from show to show as to who the hosts are going to be based on the subject matter, the actual interviewees or panelists. I mean, it will vary from. But it's been very focused around customer engagement and customer experience all the way through so far. It's sort of their first cycle of big ideas, right? And they've run. This is episode 7.
Just did the 6, so this will be number 7 coming up.
7, yeah, 7. Right. And the whole series has been focused on that subject.
All right.
And one other thing I should drop. So this morning on Spotify, Apple, etc., new episode of Talking Headless dropped. First, I apologize for missing a week because I was sick and had to get over being sick. But this episode is Chat GPT, and let's just say it's I call it holy hype, right? And let's just say I like what it's bringing awareness to, but let's just say I don't think I have the standard conclusion that most people do about it. All right, so that's that. Second part is on Anaplan and why they won CRM, why they won the CRM Watchlist 2022, and the third part is on. Well, while I was sick, I had a big brain freeze, and I put out the word on LinkedIn. Can you help me with subjects that you might want to know about in the segment called People's Playbook, where I say why the subject and 5 ways to start doing it, right? And the one that was the most prominent, and I gave a shout out to one of the there were two people suggesting this, or one person, one company. I don't know the name of the person, second person, but one is our next guest, actually, Anand Thakur. But the subject is on CRM effectiveness and efficiency, which you'd think, wait, what? They're still talking about that after 25 years? Well, the answer is yes, they are. And these were 5 steps toward actually starting from the beginning so that your CRM, the execution of whatever CRM systems you are using and for whatever purposes they have, are efficient and effective from the get-go. And then finally, there will be an episode of Engage with Paul and Kenny, recorded this weekend. It will drop next week. And I will tell you one guest, the business guest. I'm not going to even give you his name. I will just tell you he is the head of Disney's AI, right? So and we have another guest. We're still waiting on seeing whether he will do it or not. And then there will be a series of big announcements from me and Brent on 2023 coming at the end of this year.
All right. And yeah, we're here Thursdays at 3. There it is.
We're always here.
And
we're the constant.
And I have to say, I was surprised by this next one. Wow. Really? This really?
Yeah. You know that's libel, right? I can sue. You realize that I can sue?
Will you be removed from the tribe if that?
No. Because I can sue and show it's a falsehood. Right? It's not a problem. Right.
We're having fun. We need.
How much is your house worth now?
Yeah, not much. 2 bagels.
No, even better still. How much are your Panasonic BS1Hs worth?
3 bagels. That's
wow. Those are really good bagels.
Yeah. All right. Let's bring him on. When you got like 2 nicknames, yeah.
You gave him both.
Yeah. So, most people, maybe most people call him Anand Thakur. Then there's some people that call him the Midas Martech. And then there's other people, or just me, apparently, that call him the Golden Smog of CRM.
No, I've completely bought into that.
Any way you call him, we're calling him to the stage right now. Here he is. He's looking down.
I'm taking notes. There was just so many good things going on. Hang on.
Wow, I think that's a staged moment.
Yeah,
you weren't really taking notes.
It was actually slightly staged. I actually finished right before you brought me on. I heard you were going to bring me on, so I needed to wrap up my
Anand is looking down, taking
All
notes.
right, here he is, folks. He is Anand Thakur. Thank you for joining us, sir.
It's great to be here again. Happy holidays, everybody. Paul, I'm glad you're feeling better. And
yes, thank you, and happy holidays to you,
really
sir.
Sharp. You're going to have to redo that picture that you just showed with VPN swag, right? Like, I've turned from the tech guy to now the super brand guy. Like,
so that's a good idea. So if we were able to do an NFT of you, Paul, wearing a PPN shirt, holding a blueberry bagel.
If you do that, that would be good because it's just so much more material for the lawsuit. Right? It's so easy.
So Paul, you can only sue when it's not true.
I welcome. Well, that's the thing. I hate blueberry bagels, and it's been pretty clear.
If blueberry bagels are not, are the best, then you really have no ground to stand on.
This is claiming I said that, right? So that's where the libel comes in. That's libel.
Anyway,
that's libel.
This whole segment was brought to you by Sven.
This whole segment was brought to you by Epstein and Becker Law Firm.
They love bagels. All right.
My note taking might have been a little staged, but there was a lot of fantastic insights, conversations, humor. Actually, there was a lot less humor in the comments. It was a lot of really just good takes, comments on takes. I applaud everyone for the programming so far. This is a lot of pressure, guys, to come in at the sort of the semi tail end of this.
You can handle it so easily.
All right. But before, you got to tell us, you got to add your thoughts. I know there's a lot of thoughts. Tell us something that we haven't heard that you think may be in store for CRM in 2023.
Well, I think to tee off of thanks for the shout out, Paul, for the comment about, in the comments about, something to talk about CRM. I mean, right now it's meat and potatoes. I think that, one of the things is that, vendors really need to talk about arresting the fears and paint a turnaround picture. And customers need plain speak and just genuine conversation about how to walk through this, right? I mean, everybody's about to go through, a particular journey through the woods, and the reality is that you really don't need to be there's showcasing and showboating. There's no room for that right now, at least not in 2023. Many of the really good aspirations that might be out there, certainly will be for 2024 without a doubt. Because hopefully, everyone will have a better sense. Hopefully we're not here next year I'm saying the same thing, but hopefully next year we'll cut through whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And, we can start to plan for at least a more predictable future, regardless of what it is. I mean, it's not the fact that we might be going into headwinds. It's the uncertainty of how much it would be. And, we already see a lot of companies, certainly, preparing for that. Inflation's kind of inflation and monetary policy has certainly created a challenge for international and global growth, especially for a lot of these companies, especially, based here and headquartered here. Quite frankly, customers, I always come back to, everybody talks about customer centricity, and I think that's great, but they're talking about themselves and to their customers. But the reality is, I think you want to talk about customers elevating or keeping their jobs, right? The GSD. And if you want to bleep me in this next part, no, I'm just kidding. But if you know what GSD is, right, get stuff done. Right. And that wasn't a bleep, that was a chat GPT thing.
Sure, it was stuff.
But well, I mean, I get it. We're on live, and who knows, there might be some, kids watching, and I don't want to be that kind of an influence. Because that next generation that Stephanie's already teaching, I don't want to, who knows what kind of amazing geniuses she's already teaching in her arena. But the reality is, like, I mean, just it's going to be about getting stuff done with less. Forget about everything else. Reality is, there's going to be fewer customers who are going to buy fewer things, and they're going to need to find better ways that they're going to have to find better vendors or partners. We'll come back to the partners in a minute to help them navigate through, some of the challenging or uncertain times. There's nothing too much more to that. And I think a number of people talk about going back to the roots, going back to basics. Let me see notes here. See some of the notes. I really was taking notes. Fiona, certainly spoke about, more basics, speaking to a little bit of an underlying motion. I think much of the panel recognizes it. They didn't really go into it too much. The first panel of vendors and the analysts, I certainly feel that they are certainly thinking about what history comes back and reinvents itself or reemerges itself, which is probably true. And there's certainly inspirations for that. But I think for most of that, it's going to be the aspirational stuff's going to go on pause. But I think where a lot of companies are going to have an opportunity is to really harness their partner ecosystems. This is where, they are not only just an extension of your sales team, but they're truly partners and being able to help customers truly see the value of the platform, extend its utilization, effectiveness, and efficiency across the board. And again, shout out to Stephanie again. I mean, and I'm sorry if I missed some other folks because I kept getting jumped out and out, but a lot of people don't really understand their business processes. And I see this over and over again as well. As I'm certainly a little more removed than I used to be in terms of being hands-on, but even from a strategic level, you can ask some fundamental questions and you get some scratching heads or deer in headlight situations. So those vendors, the folks who can really work together and harness that partner ecosystem and work to build that value add pipeline and finding those new revenue streams are going to be the most impactful in the year coming. I did hear somebody mentioned M&A. I'm trying to remember who mentioned it. Maybe some of the first panel, a group of panels. I certainly agree. Valuations have gone through the roof, and
Clint mentioned it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's right. So a lot of people, there are a lot of, a lot of startups, a lot of innovative, technologies or solutions certainly have come out, but they've raised a lot of money and they're trying to figure out where to go next. And if there are no more raises, then maybe those technologies can be inserted back in as a value add for a lot of these bigger platforms as a result of it. So that's going to bring in more pressure, right, to sell at the same level, but make sure you're not losing. So it's the value adds that they're going to be acquiring as a result of it. Maybe some synergies, but the reality is it's 2023 is kind of hunker down a little bit and get back to that. Go ahead. Yeah.
When you say hunker down, I'm thinking, does that mean a more of a focus on the fundamentals of treating your customers better, or figuring out a better way to engage them so that in hard times, we all know, well, even in good times, it's less expensive.
Even in good times, that's right.
Yeah, it's less expensive to keep a customer than it is to create a customer.
Right.
So when we get into these recessionary times, it becomes even more important.
Right.
So how do folks just retrench on what they thought they needed to do or they did in the past, or do they try to do something new in order to solve an old problem?
I hate to say both, right? But I've always there's, regardless of where you are, you want to do a small bit of agility, experimentation on new things as they work. But I think a lot of professionals, a lot of leaders watch the industry. They're not just in their own bubble, or at least I hope not. So I think as soon as, for example, let's take AI as an example. It's been really hot. It's supplanted a lot of Web3 conversations, thankfully. And so and some other elements there. So I think what ends up happening with AI is someone's going to find some really game-changing use cases, and then everybody's going to go do it, right? And that's the kind of thing where you go back to the fundamentals on one front, but keep your eye out on what's going on in the market. The beauty of today, especially with everybody going digital, and regardless of in-person or digital, there's still going to be an element of both. People have found their groups, their cohorts, their peers, and reconnected with them and said, listen, we're kind of in it together. So what's going on? And it's going to be a little more than just, hey, I need jobs. There's actually still a lot of people who are hiring just as much as they're having to, make the layoffs. Layoffs are more of an anticipation right now. We'll see what happens next year, but we're not there yet, which is weird. It's the weirdest thing that's happened in the last 20 years. So what's going to happen with a lot of that is, people do need to go back to just, re-engaging with the customer in every traditional way possible that makes sense, where you're helping the customers, but keeping an eye out on what people have been doing. And I think collectively we'll have better ways of using newer solutions, newer concepts, newer technologies as a result of it.
So if that's the case, you talked earlier in the beginning about meat and potatoes, which I'm assuming we're not talking about like Wagyu and Red Bliss. We're talking about something else, right? So,
that's right.
But that meat and potato, given that we're looking at fundamentals as you just discussed, which are, they're more or less, what do I call them? Strategic fundamentals, right? Meaning engage with the customer, do better with the customer, blah, blah, blah. What are the meat and potatoes, meaning when it comes to CRM itself? Like, what are the things that have to happen? Because, to the other point you've made, on the vendors, Neha actually talked about going back to the basics as the first thing she even said.
Yes, Neha was the other one. Thank you. Right.
But we're talking about the hardcore not fundamentals, but literally the meat and potatoes, the hardcore things you got to do that are maybe been done for years. What are those things when it comes to, in the context at least of CRM?
And that's a great question. I'm glad you are pushing me on it, right? So strategically, a lot of leaders are going to be looking at their processes, their team, their technology, and overall thing. That's just a natural course of what happens when you're going into headwinds. What the outcome of that will be is to recognize what's working and really paying attention to what's working and starting to kind of curtail some of the more fringe things that everyone was trying. So at that level, everyone's going to start to, at least I hope, pay attention to how their business operates today. We've gone through a pre-pandemic rise, then there was the pandemic, and then there was a transformation, and then there's this lull, and now we're in this, so I think there's been a lot of whiplash in terms of strategy, certainly understandable. So now it's, hey, let's kind of take a deep breath and let's look at this objectively and with a lot of sort of headwind pressure. So that's one that's sort of at a strategic level. I'm painting broad strokes. If we want to go into that more, we can. The next point is, again, a few people, but I'm going to give a shout out to Stephanie again, right? Like a lot of people, in the middle management or leadership that are not executive, looking at how do they make use of the technologies and the solutions that they have. And then if they want to keep some of their best people, how do they make sure that they are well equipped with whatever they're doing, and then making sure there's the utilization across the board. So from a CRM perspective, that utilization, the training, whoever kind of contemplates more, leverages or provides a lot more, less entertainment and more training, more how-to, more connectivity with peers, those types of, community education and content efforts, I think will be very strong factors. And then at the last level, certainly the folks who are basically in the trenches doing this work, right, they're going to be so overwhelmed. And interestingly enough, I think a lot of folks who can find ways from a CRM perspective to find a sense of clarity. So whether that's maybe a guidance from some sort of intelligence solution, better assimilation of information. I just want to work through my motions and feel like at the end of the day, I've got a lot accomplished, and we'll see how the outcome works out. And, the comfort of being able to do this regularly without a great deal of frustration, that sort of platform or the technical experience, the customer experience from the platform, I think it'll be very powerful for a lot of people in order for them to, feel productive, feel like they're doing something, fighting off the headwinds, and, contributing to the overall goals that are out there.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, do you want to hang around or do you have time to hang around when we bring on our final? We can't even call him a guest. He's just
he's got his own show coming up, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, then why don't we do this? Why don't we just add, the guy that's, he's pretty much been there and done that in this industry, and he likes to tell us, his thoughts from time to time, and we like to hear them. He is the one and only.
There he is.
Bob Stutz. There he is. Look,
How you doing, Bob?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing better. Just getting over the flu. Man, I'm telling you, it's been one of those years. Like, it's after being locked up for so many years, and you get out, and then all of a sudden you get one thing after another, right?
Well, Bob, you look good. So
you kind of wish you were still locked up, though.
Well, let's just hope 2023 is a better year health-wise.
It will be a much better year, 2023. I'm looking forward to it. So, interesting conversation. So let's start with the vendors.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Bullshit. Same old stuff. Sorry. Look. How many times have you heard the term simplification? How many times have you heard the term connecting the data? How many times have you heard better interactions for agents? Right?
Putting the customer at the center.
It's customer at the center, right? That was Tom Siebel back in 1997, right? The whole thing about CRM and the term CRM, the definition of CRM is it's a multi-solution piece, right? CRM is just a cover term, but it incorporates everything from SFA to contact center to e-commerce to marketing, right? To lead management, right? You can go down the whole path, right? The reality is you go to any large company today, you do not hear them call it CX. You hear them call it CRM. They have a VP of CRM. They have a head of CRM. They have a, whether it's a retail company, whether it's a consumer goods company, right? Look, that I think the issue I have with all the vendors is they just keep saying the same thing over and over again. But the reality is the solutions have really not changed a whole lot, to be quite honest. Yes, there's some cool bells and whistles that you see the vendors drag out every now and then, right? But if I just go down some of the things that were said, right? Radical simplification. Well, every vendor's been saying radical simplification for decades, right? It has not gone away, right? Suites. How many times have you heard that? best of breed versus suites. We all need suites at the end of the day. Bullshit. Nobody needs a suite at the end of the day. That's just the vendor's way of saying, buy all my fucking software and be done with it. And I don't,
I need a suite at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah. Well, that would be nice, right? I used to, I would like to get one in the Bills Stadium, but that ain't happening anymore. The prices have gone outrageous.
That new stadium coming up now.
And Clint made this thing about CRM being the front, ERP being the back. I'm sorry, but that's been around that has been the age-old discussion, is how do you marry the front office processes with the back office processes so you have one continuous flow, right? Nobody has done that. And really, why is that? Even SAP hasn't done that, right? The reason is it's just difficult at the end of the day, right? And that comes to a point that actually Stephanie said, and not just Stephanie, but I think all of the sort of practitioners of using CRM said, which is silos. The silos are not in the software. The silos are in the organizational structure in these companies. The software is designed to work together, whether it's sales working with marketing, working with contact center. In this day and age, they're all designed to work together, right? The silos are actually created in the organization themselves, because in an organization, in an enterprise, and having worked with probably all of the top, Fortune 100, I can tell you, there is compartmentalization of data in companies. And this is what leads to the silos. And this is what leads to people not getting the data they need to do their job completely, which is why it is so hard for an enterprise to get a full customer 360. Because who do you want to have all that data at the end of the day? There's very sensitive data there, right? So you have this compartmentalization that happens. So I think, I think the silos is, when you hear people who have to work in CRM systems every day, they still say this. I mean, I hear it all the time, right? I get pinged on LinkedIn constantly about the silo between SFA and marketing. Well, it doesn't have to be there at the end of the day, right? It really does not have to be there, right? And I think, when I come back to the vendors, John, I love John to death, but getting back to the basics, and I think Rob said the same thing. When have we ever gotten away from the basics? To be quite honest, SFA is SFA. It's always been SFA, right? Contact centers have always been there. Things like next best action have been around since 1999, right? This is not new stuff at the end of the day. I mean, Oracle acquired the top vendor in next best action back in, I think it was 2001, 2002. SAP acquired the next best one in 2006, I believe it was. I mean, these things have been there. They're not new things at the end of the day. Now I'm going to stop inviting Ray to my house because, he came to my house and we had this goddamn discussion about it. And then he uses all this stuff, right? It's like, I'm not going to have him over my house anymore. You just,
He's stealing your thunder.
He steals my thunder all the time.
Ray.
I think, look, we're going into a recession, right? That's the prediction from everybody. And I think, Anand, you said it, right? People are going to be looking at the basics again, right? They're going to be looking at, and what I really think is something that Ray mentioned, because him and I had a very deep discussion about it when he was at my house, which is this whole concept of RevOps, revenue management, because people are going to have to look for the leakage. CRM systems have a lot of leakage. ERP systems have a lot of leakage. You need to be able to find that leakage in the back office and the leakage in the front office. And that's where companies like a Vendavo does a lot of that stuff, finding leakage in the back office. And then you got no shortage of players in the front office who are now doing RevOps, looking at revenue leakage, looking at, what's the next thing I have to sell to a customer that I forgot, right? I mean, there's a lot of that stuff. Forecasting is still a major issue. Nobody does forecasting worth a shit, right? I mean, here we are. Siebel built the first forecasting engine back in, I think we built it in 1999, 2000. It's still not gotten any better. Forecasting is still a problem. And there was a key reason for that. And that is fake deals being put into the system. That has been an age-old problem, right? It's also the fact that lead management is still, it's one of those things where which way is the wind blowing today? Because lead management, if you try to do forecasting based on lead management, you're going to fail every single time at the end of the day. And that is another piece that still has not really progressed. Lead management, forecasting, it's a huge weakness in systems today, right? I mean, they've not gotten any better. And look, I hate to say it, but look, and then the comment about industries. I think industries are the next big thing. Fuck, what were you guys doing? Sleeping for the last 20 fucking years? Siebel had, you go to any bank today, any telco today, they're still using Siebel industry product today.
Yeah.
Because there's been nothing that has been built to replace it. David Schmeier tried with Velocity, but Salesforce has limitations on what it can do. Now, the beauty about the new systems it really comes down to the cloud, right? Which is the ability to configure versus having to customize at the end of the day. Customization is expensive, right? But the problem is, you hear customers. Just last week, I had one call me up, right? I'm retired, right? But he still call me up. Well, why can't this vendor do this? Well,
why can't
because they're in the cloud. That's why they
retire?
can't do it. Because if you had your own system on premise, you would be able to do it, because then you could modify the code. You can do things that you couldn't do in the cloud. You are limited in the cloud on what you can do. And that's a reality at the end of the day. I mean, in the old days, you could take an on-prem system and you could write millions of lines of code to make it do whatever the hell you wanted to do at the end of the day. You can't do that in the cloud. It's not easy. It's costly. You can do it, but it's costly at the end of the day.
Right. Yep. I agree.
Let me go ahead, Alan. I have a question afterwards.
No, I was just agreeing. I mean, one of my notes was, you can do a lot of these things, but at what cost and what's the affordability? Right?
That's right.
You still have to balance the innovation and the affordability, especially going into 2023, much less, nonetheless, I mean, regardless of, the future as well. So go ahead, Paul.
So this goes all the way back. So one of the original holy grails of CRM was, but now it's called Customer 360, single view of the customer, single source of truth, holistic view of the customer. I mean, it's had a million names, but ultimately it means you have all the data about that customer to give you a well-rounded picture of that individual. Now I'm hearing a whole discussion going on when it comes to your point on silos, and you made a specific point about how people can't get the data they need to do their job. Is I don't care about Customer 360. I care about getting the data I need to do my job, which is not the same thing, right? It doesn't mean you won't have a lot of data on an individual, but how it's handled, how it's distributed is very different. So my question is, where's that going? Is that true? Is that, I mean, I'm of the mind that you don't, let's say this. Yeah, I love the idea of personalization. I really do. I hate the idea of hyper-personalization because that's just sticking the word hyper in front of personalization. It doesn't change any other definition whatsoever. That said, I also think that the most important data is the data you need to do your job, right? And that, yeah, you might have a repository with all the data about Paul Greenberg you ever want, but I don't care about all of it from what I'm doing as an employee. I need this, and I want that, right? I don't care about the rest. Someone else might care about it. That's great. Having all that data is great, but the way you accumulate, the way you distribute it, the way you have access to it are totally different in the two views.
No, and I think you're right. And I think there's a confusion, right? That Customer 360 is going to solve all that, right? Yeah. It doesn't solve that at the end of the day, because with the 360 you're talking about, and CDPs in particular, right? You're talking about collecting signals, right? A lot of those signals are not stuff that are stored in enterprise data systems at the end of the day, right? They're in the moment pieces of data that's needed to make that split decision on what do you offer a customer, right? Or, what's the next product you want to surface to that customer, right? It's those kind of things. The reality is, and I, this is like such a hard reality for me that hit, which was, it doesn't matter how good a vendor gets at the end of the day. And I don't care what it's in, whether it's CRM, whether it's ERP, whether it's in the marketing space, right? The reality is it's all how it's implemented at the end of the day. And are you willing to make the changes? And I'll give you a good example, right, of a product that was actually probably the best product, one of the best new products I've ever seen in the market, and this was our friends in England who now got sold to,
Thunderhead.
Thunderhead, right? I
Sold
can't
to
tell
Thunderhead.
you how many conversations I went into with chief digital officers, chief marketing officers, CEOs with that product, right? Because I did the partnership at Salesforce. We took it in, but I will tell you the biggest problem was every single chief digital officer or CMO would say to me, but if I put this product in, I'm going to have to restructure my entire organization because it's a continuous flow. And the different pieces in there today are controlled by different groups.
Right.
And so we talk about customer experience, right? But customer experience in itself is in a silo. And that's not a vendor to solve that problem at the end of the day. That is within the enterprise to solve that problem because companies have to solve that problem themselves. This has nothing to do with software at the end of the day. They like to blame it on the software, but the reality is it is the enterprises at the end of the day who refuse to restructure in a way that puts the customer at the center of everything, right? That is the key at the end of the day. Stop blaming a vendor, right? Because it's not the vendor's fault at the end of the day. The vendor can't put the customer at the center of everything. Look, they try. They've got a central database. They've got everything that's there, right? Connections between contact center, SFA, marketing, right? But they can't do it. It's not up to them. It's up to the company itself to make that happen.
Yeah.
And that starts with the CEO of the company. And unfortunately, there are not many companies who put the customer at the center. I'll come back to my favorite topic, Apple, which I freaking, just drives me nuts, right? Great products, best products under the sun, customer service. They could care less about you as a customer at the end of the day.
Build it
right?
and they will come. That's their entire philosophy.
And I have to say, look, look, I don't like to belittle anyone, but the reality is in this industry, things have not changed. I'm sorry. Things have not changed. Systems have not gotten better. They have gotten more efficient in ways, right? But if I was in a company today, I would go back and I would go to Oracle and ask them to give me a copy of Siebel 7 and I would run the freaking thing on-prem because it had everything I ever needed. I look, personally, I think the cloud is starting to run its course. Like every other thing in this industry, companies are realizing that the cloud is costing them way too much money. I think you're going to see more of a hybrid model start to appear because I think the cloud in itself, and by the way, just look at the cost of running stuff in the cloud. It is not cheap anymore, right? Look, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, it takes a lot of power to run those freaking things. It takes a lot of power and their costs are going up, which means the cost of your software in the cloud is going to go up, right? And as software, and this is where I think a lot of vendors have started to really take note, is as you become more complex, right? If you run complex processes, so I'll just give you an example. How many vendors really do order management today? Hardcore order management, not many. And I'll tell you why. Because the cost to do that kind of processing in the cloud is freaking outrageous. It's expensive. They would prefer to do it in their ERP system than to do it in the front office. But if you looked at what Siebel had with order management, complex order management, which is still used in telcos today, right? Still used in banks today. They do it on-prem because it's cheaper to run it on-prem than it is to run it in the cloud, right? I think we're, if I really think about 2023, right? Companies they're gonna clamp down, right? I think you're gonna see buying start to pull back. Companies are going to look at what they have. They're going to start looking at how they get more efficient with the products that they have. Leakage, like I said, is a key thing. I think every company, everyone I talk to, that is their key concern. How do they flush out the leakage in the back end, the front end, right? That leakage, just as a side note, I heard from a customer that when they started implementing this stuff, both on the back and the front, to look at the leakage, they found 250 million worth of leakage, right? Forecasting somebody has got to build at some juncture a better forecasting engine. A lot of companies have tried. I mean, I think there's, but forecasting sales is really hard at the end of the day, because what that means is you have to have good lead management, reliable lead management. And it's just not there. It's just not there. And I don't care what anybody says. I don't care how much AI you use at the end of the day. By the way, you can do lead management better writing a freaking SQL script in a database than you can with AI, because it's all about, I'm sorry, but look, there's some things that AI is really good at, right? But there's other things that you don't need AI for.
They had poetry.
No. And it's overkill actually in a lot of cases. Right?
Yeah,
Bob,
the best cases. Oh, go ahead, Brent.
One of the things that you talked about, how we're kind of reaching the end of, I don't know, what the cloud could do, or the usefulness of the cloud. Is it because I'm sure there's a cost component, because you're right. At first running everything in the cloud for $50 a month per user wasn't bad, but those prices have definitely creeped up, and there's definitely more cost in it. But do you also think the part is also people are still looking to use the cloud to do things the way that they used to do, and they want to be able to do it that way, instead of looking at it and say, well, what really can we do here? Don't use the thinking that we used 20 years ago, but try to broaden it out, and how can we actually leverage this to get the most out of it? Are we missing that?
That means you have to trust how the vendor built the product at the end of the day, and how the vendor built the processes, right? And not all processes are equal, right? If you take sales, just take the simplicity of sales, right? Software sales, very different from selling in a consumer goods company, right? There is not a whole lot there's very different the way these things are done, right? The problem is that a vendor can only build to one set of standards at the end of the day. And you can configure that so far to the left, so far to the right, but you can't go beyond that at the end of the day, because if you do, you run the risk in the cloud of breaking. And that is what you'll see a lot of times what happens, right? All of a sudden somebody calls up and says, oh, well, this is not working, or all my costs have just gone sky high. Well, it's because you wrote a routine that just, your compute went off the freaking chart, right? And I think in the cloud, it's all about look, the cloud was about simplification at the end of the day. And companies bought into it, right? Because look, I mean, if I think back to customers in Siebel, and like writing millions and millions and millions, we had customers who wrote 100 million lines of code around Siebel, right, to do the kinds of things that they needed to do. But it was around complex processes, right? Because no vendor could build all the complexity that is necessary, right? Look, CRM is not just about, and I think this is a part that I think a lot of people still don't understand. CRM, like anything else, it's a platform. And our basic premise back in the days with Tom and David Schmeier and myself and others was that platform was a platform that could be used to build business processes on, that a company could use to do anything, whether it was complex order management, whether it was product selection, whether it was, you could use that, look, we built a teller system for banking on the freaking platform, right? I mean, I think we sometimes don't try to think bigger about these things. I know that Mark Benioff is, and I think, the acquisition of Velocity and what Jujar's doing, love him to death. He had a good teacher for 20 plus years. He knows what he's doing, right? But I think the cloud platforms, in some ways, it makes it difficult to build those deep processes that you have to build. And I think customers have started to realize that. And, what's the solution? I don't know. I think it's somewhere in a hybrid. I think that at some juncture, it's going to be a hybrid. I think, Ray and I have had this long discussion about, dynamic applications, right? Being able to build applications on the fly. With the technology today, we're getting closer and closer to being able to do that, right? Based on the data I need at that moment, what I'm trying to do, right? It's coming. Dynamic stuff is coming. I think we're still probably maybe a couple of years away, I think, but it's also getting the vendors to think differently, right? The vendors still think the way they thought 20 years ago, right? It hasn't changed, right? We have to think about this whole business differently. And I think until we do, the software that's produced is going to continue to be the same stuff. Like, I don't see anything new. I look at all the vendors. I look at all their stuff. I don't see anything new. The only stuff I see new is in the marketing arena, right? When you have these cool little vendors that are like, come up with these point solutions that are pretty cool, right?
Well, so, I mean, since you brought it up, I mean, obviously this whole landscape's gotten to 10,000. That's just as much as Scott Brinker can hold on to. But I think I will, the one thing I'll push back on is I think the technology has definitely gotten better. But what's changed significantly, and this is to your point, is organizations haven't changed to keep up with a lot of that. And I think what ends up happening is, this is kind of what I wanted to emphasize again, especially into 2023, you need to have those people who can help you look at your own organization with you and then start to meet those, meet that curve, that acceleration curve of how you could use and maximize that opportunity. And so it's less about necessarily that the technology hasn't really changed. It has. I think the buying process has changed. The way people buy has significantly changed over the last 10 years, last 20 years. I remember, and you probably have heard the same phrasing, and this probably works really well in 2023, is the best way. I used to be in the energy space, and we sold, software to energy companies. And one of the things that I always was told, especially when I was trying to figure out the pioneering of B2B marketing in a sales organization where they have all the keys, is the best way to win an RFP is to help them write it. Right. And so if you are that close to your customer, you can get as close to that as possible in terms of how are they looking at solutions? How are they looking at solving their problems, which is certainly prolific in talking about it, but actually doing that and getting that much closer is something that can really, be a game changer, and certainly a resiliency play for a lot of folks.
And I think the best vendor who has done that over the years has really been Salesforce at the end of the day. I think they've done a good job of really understanding what customers want, being able to put the right stuff together, right? But there too, it's surface level, right? And then when you start to go deeper, right? Look, all processes are, there's a set of processes that are basic for every company at the end of the day. But it's the depth of those processes that changes for every single company, And years ago I had a rude awakening. When I first went to Siebel, we built this product for order management, and back in those days there were no cell phones. Pagers were the big thing. And if you remember the big pager company that was based out of Salt Lake City, they took our product and used it for order management. Well, little did we know that to configure a pager took almost 5,000 lines of configuration of different things that went into actually setting up a pager. There was actually code that had to be inserted. There was, and it was a rude awakening for me, right? Because I went and sat with these guys while they were doing it, and they said, "Do you see what happens? The customer changed his mind when I was on line, 1,500, and the product wouldn't let me just go back. I had to start because I've been there over again, right? And I think the complexity of processes hasn't changed. Processes are still complex. If you think about configuring a cell phone, it's very complex at the end of the day. Even a landline is very complex. Not that many people have those anymore, but there are still a lot of people who have them. But I think the systems, technology has definitely gotten better. But the systems still do what they were designed to do. I just don't think that it really, people want to pin it on the vendors, but a lot of it does come back to the companies themselves.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, ultimately technology is dumb. Right. It's not, I mean, it really is. I don't know. It's fascinating because I'm in complete agreement with the idea it's the companies where the issues lay. And I mean, look, we briefly touched on it throughout the discussion on what's the problem in CRM for 25 years been adoption. It hasn't changed a bit. It's still adoption.
Hasn't changed.
Right. Nothing has changed. Right. In that regard, maybe what you're adopting has changed a little, but not that much. And the resistances are almost the same. They may have a little more contemporary form, but they're ultimately the same. The triggers are the same. Everything's the same in that regard. But the other side of it is, when it comes to the technology being dumb, I mean, even look, everyone's been talking, obviously, and we've even briefly touched on ChatGPT. ChatGPT says something very specific. I've only been trained through 2021. It's not saying I have intelligence, I'm sentient, I now produce these amazing things that we won't need humans anymore to talk. It's basically saying, look, I've only been trained to 2021. I can't tell you a damn thing after that. And then it produces something and everyone goes, oh my God, that is amazing. And it's actually, if you said a human produced it, you say, what a piece of crap. It's buzzwords, right? I mean, it's, people are forgetting they've got the other aspect of the thing, which is, and it goes to the greatest thing, which is they get tied into novelty as opposed to the content that they really need to be looking at, right? So like ChatGPT is a toy right now. That's all it is. I'm not saying there's no possibilities. I'm not saying that it hasn't raised awareness around conversational AI, which it has, and that's actually the biggest and best thing it's done. But I did a lot of playing around with it just to see how it would work. And it was bullshit, really. Most of it was just terrible. And again, because I'm not trying to attribute AI and human, it didn't help me do anything. Where it's going to actually play.
But no one has ever, I mean, even the creator, though, Sam Altman, who's leading that effort.
Yeah.
I mean, he tweeted out, he's like, listen, this is an output for this, but everyone else kind of took it off and said, this is going to be like a game changer. Right? He even came back and said, like we're still in the midst of this.
Well,
just think of this like the beta, right? So
no, and if you remember correctly, back in 2015, Microsoft came out with what they called the sales assistant, right?
Yeah.
This was AI, right? I mean, I heard somebody on the thing mention it that they really need. Well, Microsoft actually built it. Problem was they couldn't get anybody to adopt it.
I thought you were going to say the paperclip.
I mean, and again, the idea is not to play with these things. Look, it's important to play. Don't get me wrong, but look, it's like Clubhouse to me, really. All the hype's there, and you're dealing with. I'm not saying it's not more important. Again, I'm not comparing them as apples to apples. I'm comparing them as, let's say, Gala apples to, well, actually, I guess I am comparing them as apples to apples. Gala apples to Honeycrisp, right? Different forms of apple, right? So here's the thing. Well, here's the thing. But again, it goes to the whole thing. It's the way people utilize things. It's the way they grab onto things, the way they think of things. They go to coolness and toy and play, and that's great. And it brings awareness.
You're right. It's technology in and of itself doesn't do much. It's what people want it to do or try to make
always that.
And usually stuff like, Clubhouse. I was just talking about this the other day because of the Chat GPT stuff. And everybody had like all the celebs were on there and everybody was talking about, how great it is. And we were like, what's so great about it?
But you have to understand, we are in the
I
midst.
can't even use any of those things because I try it, right?
Again,
I give up on Siri because
they're very
Siri
good
is
at
useless.
category creation. That's what
Google,
they're good at.
The Google Assistant is a little better than Siri, but they all have their.
Siri's funnier.
I think the problem is with those things is if it's one person and it's constantly learning from the single person, you may make it actually work at some juncture. But when you have multitudes, right? A single system with multitudes of users, different speech, different ways of saying things, right? It's just too tough at the end of the day. And I think, and it's because, like I said before, right? AI in CRM systems is a joke because it has to be forced in because those platforms are so old. It has to be somehow ramrodded into that platform. And the problem is that that's very difficult at the end of the day. And that's why you just don't see a lot of it. You see customers do more of it on their own than you do from vendors, because the vendors have such a hard time trying to, you have to start from scratch. You have to rethink. And this is why I keep saying, the vendors need to start thinking differently. They need to think AI first. They need to think machine learning. They need to think, what Ray talks about and what I've talked about for a long time, which is this concept of really fluid software, right? It's about building dynamic software, right? Nobody's focusing on that because everybody is just trying to keep their customers happy at the end of the day, right? And they're, I think somebody said it, the cost of innovation, right? Well, when you have 20 years of legacy, you ain't getting a whole lot of innovation built at the end of the day because most of your engineering is being used on maintenance and just maintaining what you have in the cloud because it costs a lot at the end of the day to maintain that stuff. And the bigger an application gets, the harder it is to maintain, the more complex it is to maintain. And when you take new things and start bringing it together with that old legacy stuff, it really, it takes a lot of people, and you wonder why, and I'll say like Salesforce, right idea, you got to acquire, you got to acquire that innovation at the end of the day, because it's too hard to build on your own at the end of the day. It's not, it's just too difficult.
Yeah, I think a Salesforce's advantage over some of the other vendors has been, or at least the traditional vendors, has been its ecosystem. That's the ecosystem first, right? We know we can't build all of this right away. And imagining, I've written, like you, was writing bunches of code that really wasn't extensible or had any opportunity for interoperability with other systems. That wasn't really the way that we thought of things. But eventually you got to a point where platforms were more open, for the lack of a better word, which gave other people opportunity to plug in. Now, while the old mindset was we're going to own the world, this was more of a, we want to be the center of the world, but not necessarily own all of it. And that really gave a huge advantage in terms of some of the things you were talking about. Because remember, if a developer left and they knew all that one part of code, you're hosed, right? Someone's got to go learn it. This is part of the reason why we got to the cloud and we got to all these, types of platforms and all these, interoperability kind of things, marketplaces for app exchanges, right? Those are things that's the real innovation that's happened. It may not be that the technology has, maybe it's not the way that what the technology is solving has changed. the technology has evolved, but so has the business model, and so has how people are deploying those solutions. I think has been
and
a
that,
game
and
changer.
you're absolutely
And we
right.
need another version of that. To your point,
That's
there's
right.
another
We
level.
need the next evolution of what the cloud is, right? Because if we don't get and I think, like, I think a lot of the vendors want to get there. I think it's just tough.
Yes, they do. They do. Yeah. What's the smart way of getting there? Right. What's the best way? And it ain't going to happen in 2023.
It ain't going to happen in 2023. That's for sure.
And that's okay. And that's okay. That's okay. Right. Like, that's not a problem. That's just, it gives us one less thing to worry about.
But the good point is, like, this great marketing diagram that you guys put out every year, which
it's all Scott Brinker. It's all Scott Brinker. I mean,
I'm
happy to be a part of that journey.
Which always amazes me, right? But then you peel it back and you say, why?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the reality is, as things change, especially in the marketing space, having been in that space, it's brutal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because things are changing so rapidly. How you do things, how you're going to market, how you're going to go out, right? You need those vendors who are thinking about that, because the big vendors can't think about it at the end of the day. They don't have the cycles to think about it.
They don't. Cycles. They want to, right?
They
and they're
want
thinking
to,
about
but
the
they
problem,
don't
and
have
they
the
can't figure
cycles
out
to
the
do it.
solution in the best possible way. That's the beauty of right. Yep, I agree.
And that's why you need all those 800 vendors that are out there. However many it is nowadays. I don't even know.
We'll have to pin that conversation for another day, because I have another perspective that speaks to a lot of the evolution of how we look at the customer and the evolution of how we engage. And there's an interesting intersection, for another day, but it speaks to a lot of it. And I think you'll find.
No, and I think you're right. Look at that whole
go back
conversation
and forth.
about, does a company really want to have a conversation with the customer at the end? Do they really want a relationship with the customer at the end of the day, right? Or do they just want to sell more at the end of the day, right? and I think it's different when you look at B2B versus B2C, right? There is a distinct difference in that relationship and what needs to happen in that relationship at the end of the day. I guess we lost Paul.
Yeah, he said he got hit by like a momentary outage, but he's coming back. But
Brent, you got to do your thing, right?
There he is.
Yeah, you're gonna have to talk for once, Brent.
This has been a great 2.5 hours, because I literally have limited myself, because the conversation is so great at the end of the day, which brings us to the venerable Paul Greenberg, who has something.
Right. And by the way, sorry, we literally, the whole house had a power outage momentarily. So that knocked me out, but we're back on already.
See, Bob, like Brett personifies like what we've just been talking about. He can't have all the conversation by himself. But if he can bring everybody together in a certain, structured way, that he understands the audience. He doesn't have to do anything. He just has to make sure that the stuff flows. He's the producer, right? Maybe vendors are producers.
I got to do something, to occupy my time while the Rams just wallow away in pastures. So,
Yeah, no chance of the Rams and the Bills again this year.
No.
All right, Paul, please say something, because I'm
all right. So let's get away from this discussion. So you've just heard, of course, the venerable. I think you've reached that age, Bob. No, actually, you're a year or two short yet. Bob Stutz. And by the way, he said at the end of the day, what was it, 37 times?
No, 41. We got 41.
41 times. 41. Okay.
Not that we were counting.
Now, here's the thing. As you probably heard, he's blunt. He is straightforward. He knows what he's talking about. He's got history. He's got vision. So we have had a long time discussion with him, and starting in the first quarter of 2023, we'll have our show called At the End of the Day with Bob Stutz, and it actually will be broadcast at the end of his day. Right? And every quarter, we're going to get to hear his opinion. It's a unique show because even though it's called At the End of the Day with Bob Stutz, he's the guest and he picks his own hosts. And then he literally does what he does best, which is to let you know not only how he's thinking, but why he's thinking that and why it actually makes sense that he is. Okay. And I'm very excited about it. Bob, you got anything you want to say about your show? And you don't have to fake it.
Yeah,
So
it's
don't
good
worry.
that we're not, it's not monitored by the FCC at the end of the day.
Okay, 42. That's all
That's
right.
what makes it great, man. You can be you, and that's what we want, man. 'Cause
Well, the one thing I will tell you,
Or-
in the history of CRM Playaz, which now we're heading toward our 14th year. You were the only person to drop the F-bomb ever, and you've done it 5 times. I'm keeping track. I'm doing a Vaynerchuk tracking.
And you know what? I think Anand actually came up with maybe a potential show for him, because he said on another day, because at the end of the day comes another day, and
Oh my God.
we got
We're going to end up in a loop where we're going to have to declare 8 days to a week. Right.
These are all like daytime soap operas. We should actually.
I am pumped about your show, Bob. I'm not joking. That's not like hype. That is for real. I can't wait. So, I mean, we'll release more details, and as these as we have them, there's going to be a big announcement from me and Brent on 2023 and all the things we'll be doing, including the new shows and so on. And that'll come probably at the very end of this year or at the very beginning of 2023. So be prepared. But the one we wanted to make sure everyone knew about it right now is Bob Stutz at the end of the day. All right. So
and
be
since
ready,
we are
folks.
at the end of the
Looking
day,
forward to
it. This is maybe the
Awesome.
best ever. I mean, this was such a great, from start to finish. It was just meat, and more meat. And I like meat, so this has been good for
I
me.
think what's good is seeing all the different perspectives from right. And I think it's important, right? But I think sometimes vendors lose track. They lose sight of what if you really want to change the world, right? What's that expression? If you really want to change the world, you got to step out of your comfort zone and really. And I think a lot of vendors just are afraid to do that nowadays.
Yeah.
I think they lost their. Salesforce did it years ago, right? I mean, look what they did to Siebel, right? They stepped out of they came up with the cloud. They came up, and even Salesforce has gone through its own transition, right? One of the things that Brent Taylor leaving is a shame in a lot of ways, because Brent really was the person who's propelled them into a whole new technical realm, and got them out of this private cloud into the public cloud, and got them really, moving forward in the right direction, right? But I think, I look at Oracle, right? Every one of these vendors, Oracle has so many assets at the end of the day. If I think back to the assets they've acquired, and you look at how Salesforce integrated assets versus how Oracle integrated assets, you could see the difference there. If Oracle had done it the right way, they would not be so far back in the CRM space. I mean, they're still living off of Siebel's, and all the customers still on Siebel today, right? Because there are a lot of customers still on Siebel today. But I do think, I think the best discussion is really one about the customer, and what is a customer at the end of the day, and who really wants to have a relationship with a customer at the end of the day, right?
Like a real relationship, not just
a real relationship, right? I don't want a relationship with companies I do business with. I just want them to listen at the end of the day. I don't care about having a relationship. I just want them to listen, right? And I think if you ask a lot of people, that's what they want, right? They want the vendor to listen to them at the end of the day and take their input, right? But how do you have a conversation with 1 million viewers at the end of the day?
I couldn't.
Okay.
Anand's got to go. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
It was awesome as always.
Honor, Bob, to hang out with you and dialogue with you. I hope we get to do it again.
Yeah, it'd be great, actually.
On another day, we will.
Excellent.
Right.
Happy holidays, everybody. Take care. Be safe.
Bye, guys.
Take care.
All right. This has been great. I can't wait for at the end of the day, starting next year, and love to see what happens next year. I think we're in store for some crazy stuff with the economy and the uncertainty and what people try to do in response to all that. It's going to be interesting.
It will be an interesting year because I think companies will go through, and look, that's where CRM systems become so critical at the end of the day, right? But the system is only good as the people who implement it and who really, who use it, right? And if you don't use it, like sales, it's always hard to get sales to use CRM systems. It always has been for the last decades, right? Different in a contact center because it's more controlled, more easily to control what's going on. But also companies, everybody talks about, CRM systems were just control systems. They were. That's how they were built originally. Then it evolved into really servicing the customer, which we've come a long way on. But we do have to get back to the fact that, look, that system has a lot of valuable information that companies need to run their business at the end of the day. Yep. And it's not being utilized, to be perfectly honest.
All right. I think we got to call a wrap on this one. This has been one hell of a conversation from beginning to end, including the folks in the comments section, because just on LinkedIn, and I know LinkedIn was, having issues, and we appreciate everybody that stuck around or switched over to YouTube. There's 376 comments just on LinkedIn, so I know there's over 400 total. Look at it. So lots of good discussion, lots of good thoughts, and we're really looking forward to next year. Talking more about.
I'm sure half the people who are commenting used to work for you at some point.
All right. Well,
all right, my friend.
Yeah, we're gonna call a wrap on this. I'm Brent Leary. Come on, man. I'm Brent Leary.
Say it again.
I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM Players, and of course, we got to go out with many. We will see you next week. There is a show next week, so we'll see you. Take care until then.